Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein Genialwalter einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein Genialwalter einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein Genialwalter einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades. Welcome to Socialism Saturday. Socialism Saturday is when we watch the real far left, the farthest of the far left, the most dystopian of the dystopian. We are not talking about the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is not far left. We are not talking about the progressives. The progressives are not far left. We're not even talking about the Democratic Socialists of America because, as those who watch Socialism Saturday know, the real far left radical revolutionary activists don't even consider the DSA to be, well, all that far left. We watch the people who are pushing every crazy idea into the world today. If you want to know why critical race theory is in schools, it is because of the people we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know why gender ideology is in schools, targeting children as young as 5 years old, being taught to autistic kids overtly, it is because of the people that we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know why there are attacks on parental rights and abolish the family, which we're going to be specifically talking about tonight, it is because of the people we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know who's pushing defund the police, abolish the police, it's the people we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know who is behind the environmental justice movement, who's pushing climate change everywhere, you guessed it, it is the people that we watch on Socialism Saturday. Every crazy idea is coming from the radical, revolutionary, far left. And we watch the real activists. We talk about the real organizations that we can overtly see are doing it based on things they put on the internet themselves. So that's what we're doing here. And we got a really exciting night for people tonight, especially I think this is going to be a great night for newbies if you want to really get into the dystopian stuff. Now, yesterday, we did a whole stream about how James Lindsay doesn't know what the ever-loving F queer Marxism is, which is interesting because James Lindsay has literally co-authored a book on the topic, and yet everything that James Lindsay says about queer Marxism, except when he's copying me overtly, everything James Lindsay says is not hinged into reality with what the real far left says and does. And people can give their panties in a twist about this all they want. They can complain all they want. But the fact of the matter is I am not cherry picking evidence based on the narrative that I want to sell people. I look at what the real activists are saying and doing in the real world, and what they're saying and doing in the real world has no alignment at all with what James Lindsay is pushing. And I'm going to be honest, guys, this is not an unimportant thing. People can talk about, oh, you're infighting. Well, you know what? You're being lied to by a grifter who's taking money to lie to millions of people and mislead people. And I think what James Lindsay is doing is going to get people's kids taken away. I think it's going to lead to more kids being involved in gender ideology, not less people, because we have millions of people, an entire populace, who is looking to this person to inform them, and he is overtly lying to them and hiding evidence and obfuscating evidence, because that evidence doesn't align with the political narrative that he is paid to sell by Moms for Liberty, by Turning Point USA. They are lying to people, and I just don't know how much more overt I can be about it. And if you don't believe me, stick around, because I'm going to show you the real Abolish the Family activists. That is actually a real thing. There are people who push these ideas. There are people who write books about these ideas. There are people who do tours all over the country talking about these ideas. We're going to watch one of those people give a lecture at Denison University, which is a university in Ohio. We're going to watch someone give a lecture at a university tonight on this exact topic. The real activists do all this out in the open. All we have to do is listen. Sadly, people like James Lindsay do not listen and do not correctly inform their audience of what's going on. I'll do it. I'll do it. Fine, I'll do it. Anyway, is there anyone new that is watching Socialism Saturday for the first time, or maybe the second time, or maybe you're just generally a newbie at this stuff? Do let us know if you're new. I know I can be a little intimidating sometimes, but my job is to teach you. Your job is to learn. My job, I will show up and teach if you show up and learn. Michelle Marvel, welcome, Michelle. Let's see. Is it possible that James is controlled opposition? Yes. Yes. I would say it's not only possible, I would say it's highly probable. Which again, you don't have to believe me. I'm going to show you the real stuff and you can decide for yourself what you think. Yeah, you feel smarter than everyone just by being here. Yep. In relation to the environmental justice movement, does the group Stop Oil come from this ideology? I mean, I suspect they do. I haven't looked closely enough into that group to really know, but I suspect so. Socialism in the UK is way worse than it is in America. Like the UK is like entirely socialist. Like the Conservative Party in the UK is socialist. So it's kind of like, I think probably that's true. Hi, Foggy City Dave. We're glad to see you here. Welcome. All right, guys, let me show you what we're going to be watching tonight. We got a little bit of a marathon tonight. I don't know how many of these we're going to get through, but I found a whole bunch of stuff today. I found a whole bunch of stuff that I think you are going to find very, very compelling. Who has not, even if you're not new, you might not actually know who this person is. Who is unfamiliar? Okay, let me do this instead. Press 1 in the chat if you know who Emmy O'Brien is. Press 2 in the chat if you are completely new to Emmy O'Brien and you've never listened to Emmy O'Brien before. I bring this up because Emmy O'Brien's kind of a regular fixture on Socialism Saturday. She's best friends with Sophie Lewis, who's one of our favorite Abolish the Family socialists. She's crazy. So it looks like we've got we got a couple people that are new to Emmy O'Brien. Michelle's new, Molly's new to Emmy O'Brien, Michael B hasn't seen Emmy O'Brien. Mario hasn't seen Emmy O'Brien. Green-Eyed Lady. Oh, you guys are in for a treat. Hannah. Phoenix. Well, I wouldn't say, I've seen Emmy O'Brien in person. I wouldn't say, Emmy O'Brien has, to me, this is selfish. Emmy O'Brien has, a similar kind of, body to me. So I wouldn't actually say she's, super fat. So, but I don't know. But I guess, well... Yeah, no, this was not long after I actually saw her in person. So, and I don't think she cut her hair either. Her hair is just weird. She's a queer anarcho-communist, so her hair is going to be weird. Yeah, everything we're watching tonight is relatively new, though, by the way. Status Persona has not heard of Emmy O'Brien. Foggy City Dave has not. Okay. I don't think she has, though. I think it's just the angle that you're seeing her at. I don't think she has. Because, like, again, like, I literally saw Emmy O'Brien in person, like, a couple months before this video was, and she's not bad. She's just not. But when you have boobs, if they film you from certain angles, you look bigger than you are, is essentially what it is. But she's not actually, like, she's not a big person or anything. All right. So we have a couple Emmy O'Brien presentations tonight. Emmy O'Brien is actually an Abolish the Family activist. She wrote a book called, I think, what the fuck is the name of Emmy O'Brien's book? I should have looked this up. Emmy O'Brien. I know it. I can see it in my head. It's pink. Here it is. Emmy O'Brien last year wrote a book called Family Abolition, Capitalism, and the Communizing of Care. This is not even Emmy O'Brien's first book. This is, she's actually written a fictional book about, like, the future socialist utopia called, it's called, what is it? Everything to Everyone, I think. There's actually, that's the book cover of her fictional book. So she actually, I mean, and she has done a tour all over the country talking about family abolition and why we need to abolish the family and stuff like that. So she is one of the bigger and more well-known Abolish the Family activists. Now, I want to tell people something up front that I think a lot of people will be surprised about. Emmy O'Brien has a kid. Emmy O'Brien is a parent. I'm not entirely sure if Emmy O'Brien is the mother or the father of that kid. I think she's I think she's actually a biological woman that is just, like, emasculinely presents, or she's done testosterone or something like that. So I think she is actually, like, the mother of the child. But I know for a fact that Emmy O'Brien has a kid because I've heard Emmy O'Brien talk about her kid on numerous occasions. The reason I bring this up is a lot of people think that the far left wants to abolish the nuclear family because they don't have kids or they hate their parents or anything like that, and that's just not the case. That is not why the left wants to abolish the nuclear family. It's not because they don't have kids. It's not because they don't love their kids. It's not because they don't, want to be in the lives of their kids. It's not any of those reasons. The far left believes that the nuclear family is the literal means of production of capitalism. They believe in something called social reproduction theory. Social reproduction theory, if you haven't heard me say this about 8,000 times, but there are new people on every stream, and so we have to make sure we're bringing our new people along with us, so we have to make sure they understand this as well. The idea of social reproduction theory is that social systems, like the United States, will reproduce themselves until they are disrupted. Capitalism is the engine that runs the United States. It's not just an economic system to the far left. It's also about culture. Capitalism just means private property ownership. But what they essentially believe is that children are raised to be immersed in capitalist values in the nuclear family. The nuclear family is reproducing the social system of capitalism. If they don't disrupt the nuclear family, they can never get what the left really and truly wants, which is to abolish capitalism entirely, abolish private property ownership entirely. And so they really do believe that abolishing the nuclear family is instrumental. It is key to abolishing capitalism, which is what they really want. So it's not that they don't love their kids. It's not that, I mean, and it doesn't even honestly preclude them having kids, them having relationships with their kids or things like that. They just want, they believe that they need to queer the nuclear family so that we feel more of an obligation to each other just as human beings, rather than just an obligation to take care of each other based on biological kinship. That is their argument. So I just want to make sure that's really clear up front. I'll probably have to repeat that a couple more times as we make our way through the presentation. But if anyone has questions about that, please do let me know, and I will make sure to clarify. Hey, we got a $20 super chat or a Rumble rant over on Rumble to start us off for tonight. Thank you for that. Let me just add that to our super chat total for the night. I do appreciate it. Guardianship over on Rumble says, 1, let's start this off by saying I'm boycotting YouTube for their censorship. It's time for me to stay away from that censorship machine called YouTube. Yes, I'm one of your Substack yearly subscribers. Hey, I appreciate the support on Substack as well there. Now listen, I do have a Rumble channel, just so people know. If you would prefer to watch on Rumble, let me just pull it up real quick. I would like to make sure people are subscribed to my Rumble channel, if I'm being honest with it. I think it's one of those things where, I don't know, man, some of the topics I talk about could get my YouTube channel pulled. I really hope that doesn't happen. I really hope I try to be fair and balanced and nuanced on YouTube, and I never am hateful or anything like that. And you know, I do make a priority to do that. I agree, Human Centipede. I hate Rumble, but we have to use the tools that we're given, okay? So I will run a YouTube channel as long as I'm able to run a YouTube channel. If that ever gets pulled away from me, though, I would just really like for people to be subscribed on Rumble. That's all I'm saying. That it's a backup option. It doesn't need to be the first option. It's just a backup option. And I really do hope, as I think many other people do too, that Rumble gets better someday. I also do a Rumble exclusive show called Something Controversial, stuff I really can't talk about on YouTube without really jeopardizing my channel. And so you can find that content over there as well as an exclusive. And it's free to subscribe, guys. Just do it. Just get on the Rumble accounts of all your favorite creators. I know the platform sucks. I really do get it. Let's just cross our fingers and hope that if we demand improvements, they will eventually improve. But we have to work with the tools that we have. And this is the tool that we have, okay? So it is what it is. Yeah, I don't disagree. I have no idea. I will announce it when I'm ready to. So thank you for that Rumble rant. I do appreciate it, Guardianship. So we have a couple things from Emmy O'Brien tonight that we're going to be kind of watching, and we're going to watch as much as I basically feel like it. We'll watch all the content at some point, but I want to walk you through. I found a whole bunch of content with her today. This one is relatively new. This is, well, yeah, it only got uploaded. Well, actually, no, it's not real. It's almost a year old. So I was looking at this June 6th date. So this one is from last year, but it's certainly newer than some of the Emmy O'Brien content we've watched. This is a lecture at Denison University. It's on the Denison University events page. It's like this little random YouTube channel. And so Emmy O'Brien visited Denison University to lecture about family abolition and their book that they wrote on the future Marxist utopia. And so we've got the full hour video for that. So we're going to be watching there. I do not use BitChute or Odyssey with any sort of regularity because those websites are even worse than Rumble. Just to be really clear, if you're expecting me to use BitChute and Odyssey, you're gonna be disappointed because I find those sites to be even worse than Rumble. So that's something we have. We also have this one. This is an interview Emmy O'Brien did about 8 months ago. Emmy O'Brien, Family Abolition, Capitalism, and the Communizing of Care. That is about her book. So we got that on the docket. We've got this podcast. This is just an audio-only podcast, but it is about queer Marxism, a conversation with the future queer Marxist world that they want to create with Emmy O'Brien. And then, check this out. We're not going to watch this one tonight because it's 2 hours long. Guys, look at this. This is from earlier this year. It's the dynamic duels in action. I found an episode with Sophie Lewis and Emmy O'Brien for 2 hours together talking about Abolish the Family. We're not going to watch this one tonight, but I was just very excited. It's like we so rarely, they are literally best friends. Like they're friends in real life. And so we get to see the two of them together. It's going to be so much Abolish the Family goodness. It's going to be like overwhelmed, but that's 2 hours long. We're not watching that one. But then I found this one, and I don't think we're going to get to this one tonight either. This is from the People's Forum in New York City. Now, this is the People's Forum in New York City is one of the organizations that was supporting the campus protests, and apparently they had Emmy O'Brien on their platform about 8 months ago to talk about living on communes and creating communes to fight capitalism. Again, not something we're going to watch today. I just wanted to show you guys like all of the new Emmy O'Brien stuff that I was able to find this afternoon because I went down a little bit of an Emmy O'Brien rabbit hole, and we found lots of good stuff. So we are going to be up to our neck in Emmy O'Brien. I think we're going to at least watch this one and this one today. So that's a good hour and 40 minutes between the two. And then we'll kind of go from there. And I think that we will probably save the rest of it for another day. We got a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to be doing a lot of queer Marxism, queer anarchy this week, guys. I have a need to just really do a massive kind of like deep dive into it. I'm feeling like, again, it's something that, like, there's so much rich content out there, and James Lindsay's explanation for it is so fucked up, and I want to come up with as many clips as we can to basically tell James to suck every single dick. Also, it's just really interesting content. Listen, the socialist left right now is obsessed with Palestine. They are obsessed with Palestine. And I just can't, I cannot listen to more presentations about Palestine. I just can't. And and so this is the real dystopian stuff. This is the crazy stuff. So we're going to watch a bunch of that. Hey, Michelle, thank you for the super sticker. I do appreciate it, girl. Thank you. Thank you. Guys, if you want to support the work I'm doing, there are a couple ways to do that. Of course, sending in super chats, helping me reach my nightly super chat goal is one of the ways you can help. The other way you can help is by heading over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. and signing up as a member for $8 a month or $80 a year. I am trying to reach 100 new supporting members on my Substack in the month of September. We're 25% of the way to our goal so far, and so we do have a little ways to go. How many? Press 1 in the chat if you are currently a supporting member on my Substack. Press 2 in the chat if you are not currently a supporting member on my Substack. I just want to get a sense of how many people watching right now are current supporters. By the way, no shame if I haven't earned your support yet. I'm not going to yell at you or anything. I just really want to get an idea of how many people in my chat are current supporters on there and how many people are not current supporters, so I can, you know, have realistic expectations. Oh, look at all those current supporters. Oh my God. Thank you to all the ones in the chat. We got a couple of twos. Again, no shame. I'm not going to yell at anyone. Lots of ones in the chat. Hey, I appreciate the support on Substack from all of the ones. For everyone who's a 2 right now, I hope I will be able to earn your support at some time, because if there's anything that we learned in the past week, it's that how important independently sourced information is. I make it a priority to be grassroots funded. I do not take big checks from people who have political agendas. I do not take checks from politically motivated, astroturfed organizations that are just designed to sell you a narrative. I will not do it. I don't take money from Russia or Iran or Qatar. You know, not that I wouldn't necessarily be. I'm kidding. I'm not going to take money from any foreign government. I'm just kidding. Because here's the thing. I want to be funded by you. I want to be funded by real people who want to know about this stuff in the real world. That way, my only obligation is to tell you the truth and to show you receipts. And you can decide for yourself what you think about it, okay? And so the only way I'm able to keep that going is if I meet certain supporter goals on my Substack. The Substack is where the majority of my financing comes from. So again, it's $8 a month, $80 a year. There's ways you can give me more money if you want to. You can make gift memberships. You can donate memberships. You can become a founding member for $240 a year. And I, of course, appreciate all those things. But like whatever you can do to contribute to keep me independent, because guys, it's really important to me that I'm able to stay independent. It really, really is. And I do my best to show up for you guys, spending over 12 hours a week streaming this content, breaking it down, explaining it, posting articles on my Substack, try to create as much information as I can to teach you guys so you guys can go out into the real world and have resources to show people so that we all can make a bigger impact. This is not just about me being famous on the internet. It is my job to give you guys the information and you guys the knowledge so you can go and teach people in your life too. Because that's the only way this is going to work. That's the only way we make impact, is to ourselves, all of us, not just the one on the camera, all of us going out and saying, here is what we know. In conjunction with that, I'm really excited to announce that we have a very exciting workshop coming up this week with the one, the only Honest Dog Allison, who I think is in the chat right now. Honest Dog Allison thinks I forgot about her, but I didn't forget about her. Listen, we have been playing around with this zine project in my supporter Discord for a while. Hang on. There's a girl on Twitch reacting to my videos without my permission. Who on Twitch is reacting to my videos without my permission? I mean, I don't really care. I'm just curious. Anyway, we've been playing around with this zine concept in my community for a while. I actually have this website called the Unwoke Underground where you can go online and you can kind of see some of the cool things people in my community have been creating. These are actually all created by Honest Dog Allison, so you can see she is an amazing artist. Look at this stuff. It's so cool. She let me put it on merch in my merch store and stuff like that too. We've also gotten Gala has been getting involved in stuff. These are all Allison. There's some of the stuff that Gala's been creating. She's got those zines, things you can print off, make little books. We've got Sin doing a scribble design, and that's really cool. We also have stickers. Bot's been creating some stickers. Let me show you those. Allison's been creating some stickers. Gala's created some stickers. Bot's created some stickers. These are all files. You can literally go onto the Unwoke Underground and anyone can download these files. And the whole point of it is we want to do a flyering campaign or a leafing campaign or a stickering campaign. We're actually going out and putting these materials into the real world. So you can see, here are some examples of people going out, printing off the Unwoke Underground stuff, hanging them up in different places at college campuses, at dispensaries. I want to put them in bookstores. I want to put them in coffee shops, taking a picture of it and sending to me, of course, so we can show where people are showing up. And the whole point of this is this, guys. Zines are a tool that the far left has used for years to spread their propaganda. Zines come from underground punk culture. They're DIY publications. Literally anyone can make a zine. You can utilize the content on my Substack to make a zine. You can utilize the content that we learn on Socialism Saturday to make a zine. It's basically just creating some sort of artistic way using collaging, or you can draw, or you can use AI art. AI art is like is such a valuable tool that we all have to create these kind of cool looking flyers and publications. We're putting QR codes on some of them. Those QR codes lead back to my content so people can learn more. Most importantly, they look fucking cool. They look cool. There's something that blends in at a coffee shop, a bookstore, a music shop, a dispensary, a college campus where you have these big, places where people hang up these flyers. This is not online stuff. We're doing this in the real world to try to get this information out there and to do it in a cool, compelling kind of cultural way where it's something that people want to interact with. Now, I know this looks really good, and I know some of you are being like, I can't create anything that looks that cool. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And we're going to teach you how to do this. Honest Dog Allison on Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time is going to do an online workshop. You can sign up for free on the Substack, and anyone can come and create their own zines. And we will teach you how to do it. We will walk you through the process. Maybe some of you want to write like little blurbs of content to go in the zines. Maybe some of you want to do the artistic stuff. Maybe some of you want to do both. We can pair people up. We can have people work together. The whole point of this is that it is actually a relatively simple process to do. It gets the creative juices flowing, and it's something that you can all make, and then we can put all that stuff online, make it available for everyone to download, for everyone to use, and then we can all just print off a whole bunch of stuff. And what I want to do sometime this fall is I want to take a weekend, and I want everyone to go around to a college campus near them. And I want them to bring with them flyers and stickers for the Unwoke Underground stuff. I want you to go around to all the different places on college campuses where you can hang up flyers. I want you to stick stickers on things that look cool, that have QR codes that people can scan, that can go back to my content. We want to utilize these kind of underground tactics, these more real world things that people, guys, I know some of you are younger. There was a time before the internet. There was a time before the internet where people had to do shit in the real world. And I'm actually convinced that doing stuff in the real world, going back to the time before the internet, is actually the best way to reach normal people. The people watching on Socialism Saturday right now, you're the tip of the spear. You guys are so far ahead of normal people, it's not even funny. And so we want to go back and we want to bring more people along with us, okay? And so that's why we're creating this stuff, and we're going to teach you how to do it. All you need to do is head over to the Substack. Again, that's carlin.substack.com. It's right in the middle of the homepage right now. Click on it, and there's a registration button right up at the top. And you just go and you sign up, And we're going to do an online workshop at 9 p.m. on Wednesday. If you are not available for that live workshop, it will be recorded. So please make sure you sign up anyway. And if you sign up for the workshop, what will happen is you will get an on-demand access to the recording after it's over. So this is completely free. You don't have to pay anything for it. We just want people to show up and learn. And we're having a really good time with it. And it's fun. And it's interesting. And you know what? A lot of you guys have been saying, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? I'm giving you something to do. We're doing an activity together. Okay? We're doing an activity together. This is something that anyone can do. You might think I'm not artistic. You might think I can't do it or you're intimidated. You got to put all that aside. We're going to help you do this. Everyone can contribute in some way. And so come and join us. We're going to have a good time. We don't bite or anything. And we're going to make some cool stuff, and no one else is doing stuff like this, and it's going to be awesome. All right? We're going to be awesome. So that is coming up on Wednesday. I hope everyone will sign up for that. Also, right after our stream tonight, I'm trying a new concept. So what I'm trying tonight is that following the conclusion of the Socialism Saturday stream, I'm going to hold a Twitter space. And what this is I kind of want to hear from you guys. I kind of want to do a little bit of like an after show for Socialism Saturday, kind of debrief on some of the things we learned, debrief on some of the, aspects of the presentation. But most importantly, I want to give people a way to come up and talk and to contribute their ideas as well. Because in Socialism Saturday, this is our classroom. I am the teacher of the class. You are the students in the class. And so it really is kind of like a one-way thing, even though I do interact with the chat quite a bit, but I want to make it more interactive and I want to make it more conversational. And so that's why we're going to do the Twitter space following the stream so that you guys can have your say and we can talk about things and maybe come to higher levels of understanding. I mean, listen, we've talked lately about how there's real challenges for me going into other people's Twitter spaces because they don't understand my content, they lie about me, they defame me, they don't want to listen, they get caught up in internet drama and bullshit that takes them away from the content. It makes it really difficult for me to go into other people's Twitter spaces, so why don't I just start holding my own? Because that way I get to be in control, and only people that are actually doing, like, being a productive part of the conversation are going to be involved, and I don't have to deal with any internet bullshit and drama. So winning for me, winning for you, winning for me, and we get more people involved and more people get a chance to ask questions and we get a chance to have some interaction. I hope it goes well. I hope people come out to the space tonight. And it's going to be, I scheduled it for 10 p.m., but it's going to be like right after the stream gets done. So maybe I'll take a little bit of a break, but we're going to do it like not long after the stream gets done. And that way we have our domain where we're teaching people. And we're going to make other people come to us. So that's just going to be the way it is. Hey, maybe that's better than having to punk people in the middle of a stream. Yeah, I think so. So that's going to be coming up after the space today, guys, and I hope people will come out and join me for that. All right. With that out of the way, let's get into our content for the evening. Now, as a reminder, this is a class. I am the teacher of the class. You are the student in the class. I will do my level best to break down this content, to explain what they're doing. The reason we do this is to learn the language of the left, learn how to speak socialist, not leftist, learn how to speak socialist, so that we can recognize when socialism is showing up in the real world. If you guys have questions, please put them in the chat. We will be monitoring the chat. If you guys but we do ask people follow a couple guidelines. Number one, we don't do shit posting here. This is something where a lot of people in the chat are trying to focus on what's going on. I'm trying to focus on what's going on to break it down. So if we have shit posting in the chat, it's just not conducive to us being able to process what's going on. We do also ask that people avoid debunking, because if we were going to debunk every crazy thing socialists said, we would literally be here all night. And it would be like, oh, that's crazy for reason X, Y, B, and Z. Okay, we know that. We know that debunking doesn't solve the problem. Let's just move on. Instead, the goal is to listen to them, to understand their perspective, to understand what they're doing, understanding how they show up in the world. I know sometimes the temptation to debunk is there. I'm just asking people to rein it in because it really does get to be a distraction after a while. Lastly, I have 2 rules that are always perpetual in my chat. Number 1, don't be a dick. Do not insult me. Do not insult other people in the audience. I can do whatever I want because you are in my house. But I promise you, if you don't insult me, you don't insult other people in the audience, you follow my rules, you listen to instructions I give, I'm not going to come at you, bro. We can be cool until you break the peace, but you break the peace and I promise you're going to regret it rather quickly because I can do whatever I want because you're in my house. If you don't like me, if you don't like my tone, you can leave and go somewhere else. No one's forcing you to be here. Number 2, no whining. I don't have kids. Everyone here is an adult. I trust everyone to act like an adult. I don't care about your feelings. I'm very sorry if you have strong feelings. I don't care about them, though. What I care about is understanding the far left and teaching people what is going on the far left so that we can all come to a higher level of understanding. So go cry to your mommy. Don't cry here. All right, everyone, please make sure you mount the like button for me. Please make sure you are subscribed on whatever platform that you are watching on. And we will start with this lecture from Emmy O'Brien at Denison University last year. Let's see what happened.
So I'm going to talk for 30 to 40 minutes or so, and then leave a little time for discussion. And I gather it's okay if we go over a little bit. Gather there are books for sale in the auditorium, which neither of us expected. So if you want me to sign your book, I certainly can. If anyone actually buys books anymore, it's amazing. Okay, and I have both, will speak extemporaneously a little bit. I will read from a talk a little bit, and I'll read from my books a little bit. So I want to start off and thank the college here, and particularly Michael Main for hosting me and making this happen, bringing me here from New York City.
Cider
and the
donuts,
Beck
cider.
Series and all the
So
workers
good.
that are involved in recording and setting it up and unlocking the buildings and making the campus run. And the departments of English studies or English and queer studies. So I want to begin by acknowledging the ongoing genocide that's happening in Gaza right now.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
And
So can someone do me a favor and look up the Department of Queer Studies at Denison University? Because she just said the Department of English is the Department of Queer Studies. I just want to check in on that. Can we look at that, please? Thank you.
Mass displacement of people in Gaza. The current brief ceasefire, I think, is a really positive step forward, and I hope that it's able to continue. I'm going to be coming back to Palestine later in the talk towards the end, but I'll say a few words now. My family are left Zionists or come out of that history, and I grew up influenced by Zionism. And it was studying the Nakba, the events in 1948, the mass displacement of Palestinians, that really had a huge impact in shifting my politics.
Hang on.
And one
Reagan, I accidentally just took your moderation wrench away. I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to give it back. Don't freak out or anything. I didn't mean to do that. I was trying to click on Bot's link and I accidentally took your moderator status away instead. All right, it's fixed now.
The very disturbing things about the events happening in Gaza right now is many of the sort of so-called humanitarian solutions involve the forced displacement of Palestinians, in many ways a repetition of the Nakba. And I also, the kind of positive aspect of the moment right now is the somewhat unprecedented scale of international solidarity in support of Palestinians. And I want to particularly acknowledge...
Did she say she was a Jew or did she say she was a Zionist? I don't know. I don't remember her saying she was a Jew, but maybe I just missed it.
Student organizing, which I think has been a very important component nationally. And the more we can do here to pressure the US administration, the more it's possible to actually lay the foundation for a strong peace, a just peace in Palestine. And I'll come back to that as a topic towards the end. So my most recent book is called Family Abolition. I recognize a number of you from Professor Main's courses where you read sections of the book. It's a title and concept that many people find somewhat challenging. I've been giving a lot of presentations on the book and am somewhat used to giving summaries of various accounts of what family abolition is. And I could certainly do that for you all, and maybe we'll in the discussion or work it in at some point. But I decided today to focus on one very specific aspect of the argument or of the book that I have been thinking about a lot since writing it. So family abolition, among other things, is a way of trying to theorize how, in a broad revolutionary overcoming of capitalist society, how our personal...
I love it when this is one of the reasons we love Emmy O'Brien and Sophie Lewis, because Emmy O'Brien just digs into it and she just says the quiet part out loud. Family abolition is about the overcoming of the capitalist society. Again?
That I have been thinking about a lot since writing it. So family abolition, among other things, is a way of trying to theorize how, in a broad revolutionary overcoming of capitalist society, how our personal and domestic and private lives might change.
How our personal and domestic and private lives might change to overcome capitalist society. That is the purpose of family abolition. Mark asked, do we know how Zionists define Zionism? I think it's support of Israel is how they do. So the far left is really into the BDS movement, boycott, divest, sanction. All of the college protests that you're seeing are from the far left. They're all supported by the far left. The BDS movement has existed on college campuses for a long time. It didn't just start on October 7th. It just really picked up steam after that. And so I believe their definition is not Jewish. They don't hate Jews. There are Jewish organizations that are far left organizations that do not like Israel and do not support Israel. Jewish Voices for Peace is one of the primary ones that I can think of off the top of my head. There were Jewish people involved on the college and campuses, on the college encampments. There were rabbis that went to the college encampments. There were Shabbat dinners held on the college encampments. So they're not anti-Semitic. That's conservative bullshit propaganda. They're not anti-Semitic. They just don't support Israel. I just want to get this clipped real quick, guys, because that was a really great clip about what the purpose of family abolition is. Please give me 1 sec just to make this clip. My clip tool's going to work. Yes, it does. Yep.
But I decided today to focus on one very specific aspect of the argument or of the book that I have been thinking about a lot since writing it. So family abolition, among other things, is a way of trying to theorize how, in a broad revolutionary overcoming of capitalist society, how our personal and domestic and private lives might change. So
All right, I got it. Got my little clip. Hang on, just gonna make sure it saves. Does everyone understand that, though? Family abolition is to overcome capitalist society. That's the purpose of it. Let me know if you have questions about that. And, of course, about 8,000 windows just opened on my desktop, so I just have to minimize all of these. There we go. All right, let's keep going.
In the far left, there's a lot of thinking, a lot of writing about how overcoming capitalism, alternative utopian societies, or progressive socialist societies could organize markets or states or decision-making or overcome markets and states. But
do you want to know? Do you want to know the Too Long Didn't Read, Michelle, so you're new? Here is what they mean when they say overcoming capitalist society. Capitalism is specifically defined as private property ownership. They specifically define private property ownership as your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own an apartment rental that you rent out as a landlord, your ability to own a private business, no matter how big or small that business is, your ability to own intellectual property, your parental rights are considered to be a form of private property, so your parental rights over your kids to raise your kids how you want, and your individual liberties, your freedom of speech, your freedom of religion are considered to be forms of private property. So every time you hear the left say they want to abolish capitalism, they're not talking about an economic system where you go into a store and you buy stuff and you leave. That's certainly a part of it because you're buying someone else's private property, you're giving them money for that private property, and then you're procuring it and taking it home. It is a money value exchange, right? So that's part of it. But the bigger picture is the left wants to fundamentally abolish all those things that I just said. Again, your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your intellectual property, your ability to own a private business because they want to be in charge of the means of production of everything. Your parental rights over your kids are considered to be a form of private property. We have them on video saying this over and over and over again. We also have them on video saying that individual liberties are a form of private property because in the future communist utopia, you no longer have individual liberties because you're part of a collective. To include some other things in it, they want all universal health care free on demand. That means no private doctors, no private insurance. They want everyone to go through a public education system, no private schooling, no homeschooling. They want everyone to rely on the government for energy. The government is the only provider of energy. That means the government, their government, not the current government. They can, in overthrowing capitalism, they're going to overthrow our current form of government. They call it the capitalist U.S. government. So that's going away too. And they're going to implement some completely new form of government that they say isn't the government, but it is the government. Anyway, they want the government to control who gets access to energy, who gets access to gas, who can heat their homes in the winter. Probably the most scary thing is they want to control the food supply. So you would be given your food by the government. You would be given your rations by the government. Emmy O'Brien specifically in her book talks about communizing food consumptions within communities. So everyone, if you want to eat lunch, you go to the community canteen where you get served your lunch. They actually talk about how they want to get rid of private kitchens in homes to make everyone, because you won't need a private kitchen in your home because you just go to the community canteen and get your food there. And then you communize your food consumption. Did I miss anything? I think that's a pretty good overview. I mean, at some point, they're probably going to have kids be born via surrogacy almost exclusively because there are no more parental rights. They want to get rid of the biological family in general. So probably at some point, they're going to want to transition society to having all children born via surrogacy, or through like birthing pods, where it's like there's no more biological kinship because everyone belongs to everyone else. Literally, it's like Brave New World style. Like, everyone belongs to everyone else. How does she sell it to appeal to people? That's what she's doing right now. She writes books. She gives lectures. She travels all over the country. We're watching it right now. There are a lot of people who agree with these ideas. This is where universal health care comes from. This is where public education comes from. This is where environmental and social justice come from. This is where most of the crazy ideas that we're dealing with right now come from the attacks on parental rights. Every attack you see on parental rights happening comes from this. Gender ideology comes from this. So you're seeing it happen right now, right in front of you. You just may not know explicitly that all of those movements, attacks on parental rights, gender ideology, universal health care, all that stuff, it all comes from this.
But there's also a current of writing about how families might change, how our domestic lives might change. And this whole current of writing largely disappeared from the mid-'80s into the mid-2010s. And my book is part of a reemergence of what was a longstanding historical trend in far-left, radical feminist, queer liberationist, communist, and anarchist thinking. And
Communist
there's
and
a lot of
anarchist
wonderful
thinking.
work happening
She's an
in the last few years
anarcho-communist.
that my book is in dialogue with. But this idea that it's a way of trying to theorize how a revolution might change our personal lives really places it in a register of the future, right? That family abolition.
Hang on. Denison University invited ghost hunters to the university to talk about hunting queer ghosts? No shit. Seriously? Did you send that? Did you send that in the chat? Did I just miss it because I was explaining something? But tell me you put that link. Oh, yeah. Well, I got queer studies. Yeah, we're gonna, I think it goes without saying that we're gonna watch this video at some point. Oh, I found it, bot. I found it. Hang on. Holy shit. This is a real thing. Queer. There's a whole YouTube channel called Queer Ghost Hunters. Seriously? Seriously? All right. Yup, we just Halloween special. Yup. This is we found our Halloween special. Excellent. One more thing checked off the list. Thank you, bot.
Is arguably not something that would be possible under capitalism, nor necessarily would it be desirable. And so what its role in a capitalist society is, why we would talk about family abolition now. It's a kind of difficult question. In some ways, family abolition, in this sense, has a speculative register to it. It's talking about the future, and it's talking on some level about utopianism. So this is part of why I made the unusual decision of focusing the last third of my book, which is largely a fairly traditional Marxist text on many levels, on the future, not something that Marxists talk about very often. To raise the question of family abolition is to talk about communism, about a society that hasn't existed, a society beyond class society and private property.
Beyond class society and private property, motherfuckers! Aha! Emmy O'Brien. All right, let's clip that. Come on. Unbelievable. Hang on. And watch what's going to happen. This clip will be on YouTube before I'm even done this stream because James Lindsay's fans are watching me right now to steal my fucking content. You guys can eat a dick. All right, let's listen to this clip.
Text on many levels on the future, not something that Marxists talk about very often. To raise the question of family abolition is to talk about communism, about a society that hasn't existed, a society beyond class society and private property and wage labor, the states, markets, and much else. And this speculative utopian register of the book is in some ways quite different from much Marxist theory.
All right, that's enough. I mean, it might seem like it's a simple thing, guys, but a lot of people really don't understand that when they say abolish capitalism, they mean abolish private property ownership. That's what they mean. It's not about crony capitalism. It's not about corrupt capitalism. I know some people here might be like, Carlin, capitalism kind of sucks as a system and it's corrupt. And I'm like, okay, you're not necessarily wrong about that. But when they're talking about abolishing capitalism, they mean something fundamentally different than what you mean. And you have to understand that. Okay? So that's what she just said. That's about private property. A society that hasn't existed. Now, why does she say that communism hasn't existed? Because I know one of the questions I'm going to get is, Carlin, doesn't she know that real communism has never worked? Doesn't she know that this has never worked? So some people might say, well, how can she say that communism hasn't existed? There's Cuba, there's Venezuela, there's Vietnam, there's North Korea. Like, real communism exists, like right now. How can she say, this is a pop quiz for the chat, how can she say that real communism hasn't existed? She's doing this at Denison University in Ohio. This is a lecture at Denison University. Exactly, rationalists. They say real communism never got a chance to be properly implemented. Exactly. It has never been done correctly. Real communism is... They literally do say this. Real communism has never been tried. What do you mean by state sovereignty? And this specifically is what they mean. They think that in order for communism to work, it needs to be implemented in an industrialized society. So the reason they would say, well, yeah, Cuba was a failure, it wasn't an industrialized society. That's why they want to do communism in the United States. It's never been done right because it's never been done in an industrialized society because they all failed. And so communism has, well, not exactly. It hasn't been implemented because it was never done in an industrialized society. It hasn't been properly implemented. Exactly. Wait a minute. Based on what Emmy just said, the communist utopia has never existed, except that runs counter to all the talk about communism being the Well, that is true. Like, they never really go far into detail on that, do they, Vince? That's a good question. I don't know. I don't have a comment on that right now, but I'm going to think about that one. Let's listen to her say this again.
Sure, not something that Marxists talk about very often. To raise the question of family abolition is to talk about communism, about a society that hasn't existed, a society beyond class society and private property and wage labor, the states, markets, and much else. And this speculative utopian register of the book is in some ways quite different from much Marxist theory. So I'm going to read a section of the book about the Marxist critique of utopianism.
Oh, good.
Can you still hear me all right? Okay. This section's entitled Utopianism and Provocation.
Yep.
In The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State, Engels argues that
In the Origin of Family, Private Property, and the State. We should probably read that at some point.
Lovers of a future communist society will have little use for the judgments of those of us living in the capitalist present. Quote, once such people appear, they will not care a damn about what we today think they should do. They will establish their own practice and their own public opinion, conforming therewith on the practice of each individual, and that's the end of it. Marx and Engels offer an extensive critique of what they termed utopian socialism. Utopian socialists like Fourier, who I talked about.
Hey, Michelle, I definitely think a lot of people have whole notebooks that they dedicate to notes on this stuff. I'm not opposed to people taking notes. I think it's a good idea. But since this is your first time, what I might recommend, Michelle, and this is for all new people, just allow it to wash over you. We're throwing you into the deep end of the pool tonight. I don't know how much knowledge you have about this stuff. I don't know what your background is. I don't know who else you've listened to. We've basically taken you and thrown you off the cliff into the deep end of like the ocean. And we're saying you're going to swim, Michelle. We're going to make sure you're okay, but just let it wash over you. Don't fight it. Just let it just absorb. And then we can get into notes later, but that's going to be my recommendation, and that's true for all new people, too. The reason I say this is that if this is your first time watching socialism, it's overwhelming, and it's a lot, and I know that, and we have all been where you are before. Everyone has to go through a process when they're first learning this stuff, and so, yeah, just float. Exactly, just float. Just let it go. Just float, just listen.
Earlier in the book, Robert Owens and Saint-Simon grossly err in their understanding of social transformation. According to Engels, they imagine that a compelling vision of a just society could convince the elites to cede land, power, and the means of production to new deliberate efforts at social planning. For Marx and Engels, utopians fail to grasp that socialist revolution would never come through deliberate, peaceful planning. It could only occur through the revolutionary eruption enabled by the inner contradictions of capitalist society.
Okay. That's important. What she just said there, this is not appropriate. Do not do this. This is not appropriate. This is not relevant. This is not what we're talking about. I do not want this in the chat over on Twitter. Do this again, I'm going to come over and block you. Do not do this. What she just said there is actually really important. She's reading a part of her book. What she's saying is the only way we're going to get revolution is to overthrow the current system. These people don't believe they're going to win based on the political process. These people don't think they're going to win based on elections. That's not what they mean. They think they're going to need to overthrow the system. And what she's saying is capitalism and the failures of capitalism are going to drive people to the brink. And they're going to be, it's almost going to be an uncontrollable mob that we have to harness to overthrow the system. That's what she's about to say. Hey, Maria, thank you for becoming a member of the YouTube channel. I really do appreciate it. All right, let's listen again.
At social planning. For Marx and Engels, utopians fail to grasp that socialist revolution would never come through deliberate, peaceful planning. It could only occur through the revolutionary eruption enabled by the inner contradictions of capitalist society. Capitalism produces a proletariat, they argued, a class robbed of any means of survival besides the cruelty of wage labor. These proletarians are driven by capitalist dynamics to periodic bouts of class struggle and rebellion, possessed with the unique revolutionary potential to overthrow class society altogether.
Overthrow class society means violent revolution against the U.S. capitalist government.
This class would benefit from a thoroughgoing grasp of the nature of capitalism, offered by Capital and other scientific works on the capitalist mode of production, and the tools of practical organizing. In the assessments of Marx and Engels, utopian visions are unnecessary because the future could only emerge through the dynamics of struggle itself. And one piece of historical context, utopian socialists were huge in the early 19th century. Tons of people hated capitalism. They really wanted something different. And in France in particular, but also elsewhere, there was really widespread enthusiasm for ideas of utopian socialists. And then Marx and Engels show up and we're like, no, these guys are charlatans. Let us tell you why. In response to a critical review of Capital Volume 1, Marx references the utopian socialist theorist Auguste Comte. Quote, thus the Paris Review Positiviste reproaches me in that on the one hand, I treat economics metaphysically, and on the other, confine myself to the mere critical analysis of actual facts. Instead of writing receipts, Comteist ones, for the cookshops of the future. This phrase, writing receipts for the cookshops of the future, became the general condemnation by generations of Marxist activists of any discussion of a post-revolutionary society. Indeed, utopian visioning has shown little purchase in creating a new society. Utopian socialists depended on the colonial dispossession of the settler frontier to secure the land necessary for their experiments. This includes Robert Owen's New Harmony in Indiana and the 28 Fourierist communes across the United States in the 1840s. To this list, I would add the Israeli kibbutz movement, where socialist values depended on settler colonialism and state-backed genocidal dispossession to secure necessary resources. Without
a lot of people have made the point to me. They're like, Carlin, Israel's basically communist or socialist. Like, they've got these kibbutz things that are basically communist. So why don't real socialists and communists, like, support Israel? Because they're basically acting like communists. Emmy O'Brien just explained why. Because even though they might have this kibbutz thing that has, like, socialist values and all that stuff, they are still, at the end of the day, these settler colonists. That's why the left doesn't like Israel. It has nothing to do with them being Jewish. They don't actually care that they're Jewish. It has nothing to do with Palestinians being Muslim and brown. It has nothing to do with that at all. The left does not like Israel because Israel are the settler colonists. What that means is Israel came in and stole indigenous land from the Palestinian people and then took that land and privatized it under the oppressive force of capitalism. That's what colonialization or colonization means. It means taking land and privatizing it under the oppressive force of capitalism. The reason they support the Palestinians is because the Palestinians are in a glorious uprising to decolonize the land. That is, take their land back from Israel. That's why the left is so excited about what's going on, because this is very literally the revolution against capitalism. They consider the Israelis to be the capitalists, the bourgeois, the private property owners, the Palestinians to be the oppressed proletariat. That's the dynamic that's at play. And so what Emmy O'Brien just said is, even though these kibbutz things are kind of socialist, they're still the settler colonists, so it doesn't even matter. Because by virtue of them being the settler colonists, they are inherently evil. They are inherently the oppressors. They are inherently the bourgeois. What did I say about debunking, bro? You are one of the problem children I have that doesn't follow the fucking rules. Start following the rules. It doesn't matter. Let's listen to that again.
Fourierist communes across the United States in the 1840s. To this list, I would add the Israeli kibbutz movement, where socialist values depended on settler colonialism and state-backed genocidal dispossession to secure necessary resources.
You don't get paid enough, Carlin? Bro, don't I know it? Don't I know it? Don't I know it? If you would like to make sure that I get paid an amount that is fair for the amount of knowledge that I am dropping on the world, please head over to my Substack, which is Carlin, Karlyn, .substack.com, and sign up for a membership for $8 a month or $80 a year. I only get paid if you find the work I do valuable and you choose to step up and support it. That is the only way I make money. I don't take big paychecks from political organizations. I don't take big paychecks to sell you a narrative. My only job is to show you what's going on and to tell you the truth. And I trust that if I do a good job of it, then I will have enough real people supporting my work that I will be able to continue to do it. If you would like to send me in some super chats, that would be great too. If you'd like to share my workout, if you can't afford to support it, I understand. Share my workout. Go tweet it. Go post it on your Facebook. Go share it with people in your community. Help me get more people watching it. Lots of ways you can support what I'm doing, and I really appreciate it.
Without any intention to overthrow capitalist society by violently seizing land and the means of production, utopian socialists relied on the endorsement of racial capitalism available through settler colonialism. Not surprisingly, Fourier and most utopian socialists were uncritical of European colonialism and white supremacy. They also failed to instill any lasting change. Is discussing scenarios of family abolition in a revolutionary future committing utopianism's error? Marx and Engels are absolutely correct that any future revolutionary society will be made only by those who build it. They will likely care very little about what we have to say now. The revolution, as Engels aptly puts it, cannot be worked out in advance. But unlike many Marxists and communization theorists I engage here, I see speculative visioning as a helpful component to ongoing struggles. When revolutionary moments do emerge, each participant becomes an agent of history. At such moments, people draw on their imaginations, their inchoate hopes, their deep felt yearnings, all to practically meet the challenge of the moment. At revolutionary moments, people take up ideas circulating in the world, evaluate whether they serve the moment, debate them with comrades, try them out, see how they work, and then come up with new ones. As new waves of struggles swell in future years, people will seize on and radically remake ideas they find at hand that speak to new emergent possibilities. At revolutionary moments, everyone is called on to be a utopian planner. Even in non-revolutionary moments, utopian visioning impulses can play a powerful role in fleshing out the implications of present-day values and practices. Speculative fiction offers people a chance to think through what freedom.
You're not what I need you to start doing is to realize that none of this matters. I know that's hard. What you're trying to do is rationalize what the far left believes. What I need you to do is put aside reality as you see it. Because what you need to do in order to understand the left and why they do what they do is to put aside the way you see the world and to step into their shoes. They don't care about any of this. They don't care about any of this right now. Maybe they will someday when it becomes politically convenient to do so. But what you need to understand is the left cares about the issues that allow them to advance their Marxist revolution. That's all they care about. The only reason they care about what's going on in Palestine is because they are using it as a way to advance their Marxist revolution. That's not to say the Free Palestine movement isn't a real thing. The Free Palestine movement's been around for a long time, but most of the college campus protesters, most of the people you see in the streets, they're only using the issue to advance their revolution, to advance their talking points, to push us farther left than we were before. So they don't care about any of this. The revolution is always the cause. That's it. It's always about abolishing capitalism. That's it.
Means to us. Far too often, radicals today internalize the anti-utopian realism of the capitalist present. Instead, the speculative impulse to imagine something better could support and invigorate day-to-day struggle. Revolutionary Black feminists like Alexis Pauline Gumbs, Adrienne Marie Brown, and Walida Imarashi have brought speculative imagining into movement work with powerful and rich effects. Family abolition names and attempts to describe a necessary dimension of overcoming class society, the way a broader revolutionary transformation could reshape our personal lives. It is not a program nor a plan to be implemented, nor necessarily even a slogan to be rallied around. It is a way of naming and thinking about what a free society could mean in how we raise children, how we survive, how we love, and how we age. Family abolition is perhaps a provocation. It is not meant to enrage, though no doubt and unfortunately will. It is a call on every one of us to imagine, to debate, to think about what social forms could foster lives worth living. So I'm going to repeat a little bit of this and elaborate a little bit on it, reflecting on some of my recent thinking. I've come to
I don't know what this means, but it kind of seems like you're Fed posting in my chat, and I do not appreciate it. I'm putting you in a timeout. I'm removing this chat. I don't want to see anything like that ever again.
To argue that speaking about a post-revolutionary or free society may have very little to do with any form of social planning or top-down imposition of a revolutionary program, nor necessarily even a blueprint.
Are you here to learn, or are you here to shitpost? Because this non-binary individual is one of the leading Abolish the Family activists in the country right now. She's lecturing at a university in Ohio. She's teaching students directly. Coming into the chat and shitposting, which is explicitly against the rules that I explained earlier, does not help at all. So you're either here to learn, or you can go somewhere else and shitpost, but you're not going to do it here. Then no more shitposting. It's not allowed. If you have questions about what is being said, you're welcome to ask those questions, but we're not shitposting.
For anyone to follow. All these fundamentally misread the dynamics of how social movements actually unfold, about how contradictions arise imminently from within racial capitalism, and the central process through which joining in political struggle offers people the chance to become historical agents, to join in the co-creation of new forms and practices. But the speculative register does offer us something essential to present movements. Speaking about the world we want to win, imagining how society may appear if present organizing and present struggles for broad transformation are successful, is a way of naming, exploring, and theorizing about our desire in the present. Desire is central to social movements. The manifold desires that lead us to join in a collective effort, the desires that motivate our choices and actions.
This lecture is taking place at Denison University in Ohio. It took place on November 30th, 2023. It's on their YouTube channel. She doesn't teach at Denison University. Emmy O'Brien lives in Brooklyn, I think. But that is where this is taking place.
Is reorganized. The desires reflected in our demands and goals, and perhaps most importantly, the desires that collective struggle can help foster, enable, and unleash within us. On a mass scale, collective social movements become the basis for large numbers of people to be able to imagine fundamentally different worlds. I want to give two recent examples. First, on police abolition. So in the 2000s, I was a part of a small political organization nationally that called for the abolition of prisons. We argued that incarceration is a disastrous way to solve social problems, the prisons don't make us safer, and that the movements for prisoners themselves could give us a direction towards justice. It is an easy conceptual step for people versed in prison abolition to also argue that very similarly, policing does not make us safer.
Did you ever tell us who was streaming my videos on Twitch? Did I just miss it?
While decades old and shared by strata of radicals from multiple political traditions, police and prison abolition were quite marginal politics. It was the George Floyd rebellion that propelled police abolition into being
the George Floyd rebellion, or the George Floyd uprising. That's what they call the 2020 Summer of Love.
Suddenly conceivable to many young people who are joining in the protests. Over the summer of 2020, about 26 million people joined in some anti-police brutality action. People rioted in 150 cities. They burnt down a police station in Minneapolis. And suddenly, tens of thousands of teenagers, in however a confused way, were arguing about a world without police, about the abolition of police altogether. And this revolutionary idea, this revolutionary utopian horizon, this form of speculative fiction suddenly became conceivable.
Hang on. I understand that this stuff makes people angry. Bro, I've been watching this stuff 6 days a week for years, for literally years. I understand that it makes people angry. But what I'm telling you is that the only way to interact with this stuff and maintain some semblance of sanity is to do it from a detached perspective. Everyone goes through a process with this. Everyone goes through a process. You're going to go through mourning. You're going to go through bargaining. You're going to go through anger. You're going to go through like disbelief. Like, everyone goes through a process when they first start interacting with this stuff. And I want to just like make sure that's really clear. I'm not just saying it for you. I'm saying it for anyone, especially people who might be new. But this is happening in the real world right in front of us. And no one's talking about it. And so the only way we're going to find out what is real is by watching it directly and trying to do it from like a dispassionate sense to try to get a sense of it. So my chat is not a place to work out anger because it's just distracting. But if you want support, if you want to, you can find it here. Yeah, some people get depressed. It took some people months to come around to this idea. People go through denial. This is real. The cognitive dissonance when you first start watching this stuff is real. But we have to watch it. The reason we have to watch it is because no one else is fucking doing it. I get angry every single day that I'm the only person talking about this stuff. I get angry every single time James Lindsay steals something from me and doesn't tell people where it comes from and then completely misuses it and uses it to say Kamala Harris is a communist when she's not. I get angry too, bro. I was yelling a lot yesterday. Maximus says, I stopped watching Dr. K's socialist content for 3 to 4 months because it was making me depressed. Well, and that's why we have things like the Unwoke Zine project that we're going to be doing. Why, like, we need to make this like a fun thing to do, So, I guess I bring this up because if you're feeling upset, you're not alone, and I want you to know you're not alone, and I want you to know that every single person that has ever encountered my content has gone through this. I went through this live on the internet. I get it. Hang in there. This is the person that's streaming me on Twitch. All right, I don't know who that is. If anyone knows who that is, let me know.
To large numbers of people. Importantly, you really couldn't abolish police if you still organize society based on private property. So the abolition of police.
You can't abolish police if you organize society based on private property. Hang on, I'm just pulling up that person on Twitch to try to find what they're doing. Are they streaming right now? Oh, no, well, she's doing something right now. She's not doing me. Okay, I just want to get that quote. So what does that mean? You can't abolish the police if, like, what did she say again? Hang on, I'm just going to clip this and then we'll discuss. Got a lot of good clips already, only 18 minutes in.
To large numbers of people. Importantly, you really couldn't abolish police if you still organize society based on private property. So the abolition of police, although not everyone acknowledges this, is also a way of talking about communism.
How great is that clip? The action of the police is also a way to talk about communism. Why might that be? And I've already seen some answers in the chat. Why might that be? Why can't you abolish the police if you still have a society built on private property? And so abolish the police is really a great way to talk about communism. Why might that be? Because we must abolish capitalism to abolish the police. Why must we abolish capitalism in order to abolish the police? Because police are considered to be the enforcers of private property. Private property requires enforcers. They require managers. You have to abolish capitalism to abolish the police. Police are the protectors of private property. Police uphold and enforce capitalism. That means they uphold and enforce private property. Law enforcement to protect the capitalist system, private property ownership, go hand in hand. Police are the protectors of private property. If people didn't own stuff, there wouldn't be anything to steal, so no need for the police. Excellent definition, excellent summary. Police are the managers of private property. Police are thought of as the managers of private property because you will always have crime until you have communism. They really do believe that communism will end all crime because everyone will have access to everything they need, so there'd be no more need for crime. So if there's no more crime and there's no more private property, there's no more need for the police or prisons. Everyone gets out of jail. Yay! That's actually what they believe because police are the managers of private property. They're the managers of private property. Exactly. They believe that if they abolish all private property ownership, then everyone will have access to all resources, which means everyone will have everything they need, which means there will be no need to commit crimes. They believe that capitalism is the cause of all crime. Seriously. Capitalism and a lack of healthcare or mental health care is the cause of all crime. If we get rid of private property, everyone has universal health care. They have all the psychiatrists they want, all the drugs they want, all the trans surgeries they want. It's all provided by the state. So that's all taken care of. And there's no more private property because everyone has access to housing and food, and everyone has a job because they're going to assign you your job. You don't get to pick your job. They're going to give you a job. And if you don't do that job, you don't eat. But everyone has a job. Everyone has food because communism is great. That's what they think. There will be no crime if there is no capitalism because capitalism causes all crime. One more time.
Importantly, you really couldn't abolish police if you still organize society based on private property. So the abolition of police, although not everyone acknowledges this, is also a way of talking about communism. So my second example is in the recent outpouring of international...
Actually, it's interesting that you have this because I have a clip sitting on my desktop right now of a Socialism Saturday that we did a couple weeks ago where they talked about how... Actually, I think I put this clip out on Twitter a couple weeks ago. They talked about how when we achieve the future socialist society, they're going to abolish all prisons, they're going to abolish the police, and they're going to repurpose prisons to segregate off people from society who are working to overthrow socialism or communism. So essentially what they're going to do, and again, I have them on video, they said it explicitly on video, is that they were going to basically segregate from society anyone who does not buy into socialism or communism. So yes, effectively they will repurpose the prison, and they will create their own Gestapo to create gulags to send dissenters to their ideology. That was from the Party of Socialism and Liberation, by the way. They're running a presidential and vice presidential candidate. They're on the ballot this November. Fun times.
Solidarity with the people of Gaza, many have turned to the slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Israeli state policy has actively worked to fragment the Palestinian struggle and Palestinian people, dividing them between Palestinians who were expelled from the territory of Palestine altogether in 1948 and 1967, so living diasporically, often living in refugee camps in surrounding countries or scattered around the world. Those Palestinians who are now Arab citizens of Israel, who face innumerable laws of racial and religious discrimination within Israel, and those Palestinians who live in the occupied territories of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And these three separate groups, it can appear to have three slightly different sets of interests, and often Israeli policy pits them against each other, and many of the peace processes really emphasize one group at the expense of others. So people talk about peace solutions that don't involve a right to return, for people to be able to return to Palestine.
This is actually a really good question. I bet you something's going to happen on the campuses. We should be keeping an eye, guys, we should be keeping an eye out for this. Everyone keep an eye out on all the far left groups, especially on the college campuses or associated with like the Party of Socialism and Liberation and stuff like that. And see if anyone has anything planned for October 7th.
Displaced, or there's anti-discrimination campaigns for Israeli citizens that don't really engage in any meaningful sense what's happening in the occupied territories and so forth. So from the river to the sea in this context is a slogan that refuses this fragmentation, that insists on the shared solidarity between Palestinians, the unity of the Palestinian struggle, and the need to overturn apartheid altogether. It calls for a future of a Palestine not based on religious division and domination. For most Palestinians who've been polled about this slogan, it's described simply a secular and democratic country where all citizens enjoy equal rights. But the slogan, like many utopian horizons, also points beyond something that's immediately concrete, perhaps towards thinking about a Palestine that may be free from capitalism and its violence. And many Palestinian activists.
A Palestine that will be free from capitalism and its violence. What did I say? What did I say? Hang on, clippy clip. So many tonight. Again.
That's immediately concrete, perhaps towards thinking about a Palestine that may be free from capitalism and its violence. And many Palestinian activists think and talk about it this way. The international solidarity struggle that has grown around Palestine reflects a utopian commitment beyond the conventional forms of nationalism and the nation state. This slogan is also widely misinterpreted by Zionists.
Hang on. Many Palestinian activists interpret as freeing Palestine from capitalism. Wouldn't you know it? It was never about anti-Semitism, was it? Like I've been saying for months. It was never about anti-Semitism. It was always about the Palestinians being in the glorious uprising against capitalism. I just want to listen to that one more time. I apologize, guys.
Many utopian horizons also points beyond something that's immediately concrete, perhaps towards thinking about a Palestine that may be free from capitalism and its violence. And many Palestinian activists think and talk about it this way. The international solidarity struggle that has grown around Palestine reflects a utopian commitment beyond the conventional forms of nationalism and the nation state. This slogan is also widely misinterpreted by Zionists and their allies as calling for the extermination of Jews. In psychoanalysis, we call this a projection, that what's actually happening to the people of Gaza is imagined as being desired by Palestinians to happen to Israelis.
She just said that the Israelis are projecting their own genocide onto everyone else, when in fact it's the Israelis that are committing the genocide against the Palestinians.
But even most hardline Palestinian political factions have repeatedly indicated their willingness to at least negotiate for a possible future where Jews remain in historic Palestine. A just future is possible in Palestine, and the slogan, among others, points us to this future. So to declare from the river to the sea, in this sense, is an act of science fiction, of speculative imaginaries that allow people to vision beyond the brutal constraints of the present. It's the horror and war of history, and the restricted and tepid proposals often available about what could come next. It is an act of utopian speculation. I came to these set of questions in part through my experience co-writing a science fiction novel with my best friend Aman Abdelhadi, where we depict a post-revolutionary global society through the prism of fictional oral histories with New Yorkers. So we are very old ladies, a global revolution has happened, and we're going around interviewing fictional people about their experiences of this struggle. Neither of us are fiction writers before this book. I was saying earlier to a class, I think neither of us are that extraordinary as fiction writers. And yet, when we went around talking with people about the book, in every city, we found readers that had become completely obsessed with it, who had bought dozens of copies for their friends.
Yeah, well, the sci-fi novel is what she said. It's called Everything to Everyone. We should probably actually read it at some point. Maybe that would be a good book club book. I have it on my Kindle. I just haven't read it yet. And it's basically what it is she worked with another author to write a fictional future account of old women looking back on what it was like to go through the socialist revolution.
We thought it was the best book they ever read, who were like in tears while talking to us. And on some level, this was a little bit baffling initially, right? We're not the most profound writers in the world. And slowly we began to really make sense of it. How for many politically engaged people feel very deeply starved for any sense of being able to imagine what we're fighting for at all. That our desires are highly restricted, and we don't allow ourselves to even imagine what winning could look like. And so the love of our book really pointed to how being able to hope, being able to desire is so hard to find and nurture in social movements. So recently, with the events in Gaza, many people have been rereading the second chapter of our book, written by Aman. Aman Abdelhadi, my co-author, is of Palestinian descent. And in this chapter, we describe a revolutionary transition, the fall of the state of Israel, the transition to a free society in Palestine.
They describe the fall of Israel in their book? Yo. We gotta see it now. Autumn, Nick Fuentes has been condemning Trump for months. Do you really think we aren't aware of this? I am absolutely still on team Nick Fuentes. Nick is right in 100% of the things that he says about Trump. So I don't think you're gonna fuck around with that. Autumn, do you understand that most of us watch Nick's show like almost every single night live while it's on? We are well aware of Nick's position on this issue, and we agree with him.
And it as the pivot of a communist transition throughout the Middle East and ultimately the world. So I have another 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm going to read from a couple of chapters in the novel. The first, I'm going to read from a man's chapter.
Fuck yes, I do. Great War II is awesome.
So I did not write this, and this is about the liberation of Palestine. And then I'm going to read from one of my own chapters to close out. Okay. So the first and second Intifada are major historical events, and here they're talking about the final Intifada. What do you think made the final Intifada different from the
Are
first
you
three?
shitting me? She called it the final Intifada. Everything, by the way, Everything to Everyone was written several years ago. This was not a new book. This is not a book that was written after October 7th. She called it fuck, I should have read this book already. God damn it. This book has been on my reading list for a while. We're going to do a book club. I just decided we're going to have to do a book club with this book. Anyway, let me show people what it is. I'll show people exactly what it is. Everything to Everyone, M.E. O'Brien. Yeah, everyone give 07s in the chat for Autumn. Hail Autumn. So this book was published in 2022. This is not a new book. It's called Everything for Everyone, An Oral History of the New York Commune 2052 to 2072. By the way, 2050 is about the time frame I think that the socialist revolution in America is going to be complete. Maybe a little bit sooner. But that's kind of like, I have 2050 as like my kind of like outside date for when I think the socialist revolution is going to happen. And I thought, and that was just based on my own analysis. M.E. O'Brien is literally saying it happened in 2050 or thereabouts. So that's what it is. It's available on all the different things. So everyone get a copy of it. We'll do a book club. I really do mean it this time. I've got the Kindle version. I'll put it in the chat if people want to get a copy of it. We should all read this, obviously, because no one else can do it, so we have to do it.
Man asks. And a man is interviewing Kakab Hassan. Hassan says, and my Arabic is terrible. A man is fluent in Arabic. There's Arabic scattered in the book. I'll butcher it. Hassan says two things.
Apparently so.
There was a lot more pressure.
Actually, you know what? Actually, we could actually, honestly, and I was actually thinking about doing this anyway, there are audiobook versions of it on YouTube. I'm pretty sure there are people just reading the audiobook that's available for free on YouTube. So maybe we should just listen to it together as a community. Maybe we should just do that. But people can read it too. But I'm pretty sure I've seen audio versions of it like on YouTube, not through Audible.
From the 48, it wasn't just the West Bank rising. They had started to happen in the 20s when you saw more agitation in 48. Earlier, they defined the 48. Let's see if I can find that for you all. Oh, we'll get to it. The second and most important thing was pressure on the Israeli state. In the 20s, you had massive boycotts of Israel by individuals, companies, universities, and industries all over the world. Those got stronger and stronger until the main holdout was really only the US government. By 2030 in the US, shoring up Israel had become unpopular. By the mid-30s, it had become financially impossible. No more money for surveillance, for the military, for all the fancy weapons that came from the US. That, plus the market crashes, spelled the end for the dollar. How were the market crashes affecting things? A man asks. Honestly, horribly, similar to everywhere. The state couldn't afford to keep up the luxuries they gave to working class and middle class Jews because the global economy was faltering.
What? Does M.E. O'Brien call out the Jews in this book? This is like the second time in a couple of weeks that we have seen socialists call out the Jews like overtly. Sophie Lewis a couple weeks ago was talking about how the Jews were both the communists and the bankers in Germany. And I was like, yeah, Sophie, yup, that's true. Yup. Holy shit.
similar to everywhere. The state couldn't afford to keep up the luxuries they gave to working class and middle class Jews because the global economy was faltering. So no more free healthcare or free housing for new settlers in the West Bank. None of that. That really brought down buy-in for the whole Zionist project. And of course, it upped the insurrectionary pressure from Palestinians who were literally starving. Okay, so what happens after you cross the border? When we got into Gaza, I reached out to a distant cousin who lives there, Ahmad. Ahmad was amazing. He'd been living in his Katiba. This was a small resistance militia or brigade. They were living in an old UN school that had been shelled and hollowed out. Only the outside walls survived, and they built a...
Emmy O'Brien wrote a fictional account in which they connect with militant revolutionaries in Gaza. You know what? I like. You know what? The book found us at exactly the right time.
little tent city inside. When we got there, they welcomed us in. People really familied in their katab because so many families were broken from the shelling. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Tell me about the day the border fell. It was the most beautiful day of my life. There had been marches, so many marches. There was a sense that as a movement, we had tried guerrilla warfare on its own and it hadn't worked. So there had to be both a military presence and just mass uprising. People in Kateb would work on bombing the borders, blowing up military outposts and all that. But most people were just organizers, and they'd work on the marches. The marches were like big fucking parades. It's where everyone let out steam from the stress of the random bombings, the stress of the raids, all of it. We cried and we sang and we danced. The Dabka lines were bigger than you'd ever seen. There was a big march that day. It was supposed to be the biggest one, but people were worried that everyone was getting tired of being out and about all the time. We worried no one would show up. But then the Israelis, they attacked a school bus that morning. They straight up shot up this bus, killed all the kids on their way to school. The photo went up on ours of the bus in tatters, bits of flesh everywhere. It was horrifying. And everyone came the fuck out. Like, seriously, all of Gaza marched that day. At least 1 million people marched to the border. We stood there and the army started shooting at us. And we simply shouted, "More will come.
Can you send me the
more
link?
will come.
I think
more
I know which one you're
will come."
talking about, but can you send it
Because
to me?
it was true. More would come. It was literally do or die. The soldiers were overwhelmed and kind of backing up. They had no real strategy. Ours was to do what we had always done as Palestinians: refuse to stop existing, refuse to disappear. Those of us that were armed started shooting at them. Some people made Molotov cocktails, and of course they shot at us. But when our shubhada would fall, more would come. They couldn't stop us. They started to see that. This woman got on the mic, a comrade, I forget her name. She was killed a few days later. She grabbed this megaphone and started shouting in English, "Drop the gun and run." It became a chant and everyone picked it up. Hundreds of thousands chanting at these soldiers, "Drop the gun and run." And eventually they did. They dropped their guns and they ran. And to tell you the truth, we didn't run after them because it wasn't about them. It was about us. How big and beautiful we were in that moment. How unstoppable. We knew what we had done, what our parents and grandparents had dreamt of doing. We knew that nothing would ever be the same again. They wore what Darwish had called them, aborun, passerby, us Palestine, that was forever. The man says, incredible. Hassan, everything fell into place after that. We marched and the rest of Palestine marched. And everywhere the chant was the same, drop the gun and run. The IDF fell in a few weeks. We liberated huge swaths of land in those months of marching. The mixed cities fell first, and Khalil and Aqads. Basically, everyone in the Israeli government defected. Anyone who had the money or the means to get out did. What happened to those who stayed? With every flare-up and uprising, more and more people had been leaving. Over the course of the years leading up to 2035, hundreds of thousands went back to Europe and America. Whole cities emptied out. They mostly already had dual citizenship in Europe and America. Most of the Ashkenazis left. The people who remained were the poor people, the Eastern Europeans, the Arab Jews. A lot of them had come around to insurrection because the state wasn't meeting their needs anymore. So what is next for you? And they talk about it for a while. I went to fight in Lebanon. After we liberated Palestine, the rest of the Levant followed suit. Palestine was the model. We were occupied by Israel. Others were occupied by their ruling classes. People were done with occupation, no matter who was doing it. So yeah, I spent a decade fighting in Khattab, first in Palestine, then in Lebanon. Then I wanted to settle down a bit, and I worked on commune councils. It was a good life, but I missed my family here.
Like, honestly, like, we probably should just read everything that Emmy O'Brien has ever written at some point. Because I've heard her say this specifically. She is involved in like queer and narco-communist subculture. I've heard her talk about it on like a couple different occasions. So she is our gateway to everything else. And then if we can see the people that she's citing in her writings, those are other people that she's friends with that are also involved in this. And that should be able to lead us to like a nice little treasure trove of stuff that people probably haven't found before. Yeah, Emmy O'Brien's non-binary. I say she just because I do. Like, by the way, people are saying I don't think Emmy O'Brien is a man. I think Emmy O'Brien has giant fucking boobs. You might not be able to tell, like, on video, but I've seen Emmy O'Brien in person. Emmy O'Brien has giant fuck-off boobs. So I think that Emmy O'Brien is a woman that went on testosterone at some point because going on testosterone is a way to prove your bona fides in the queer identity or whatever the fuck. She goes by they, them pronouns. Yeah, and like I said, I'm pretty sure that Emmy O'Brien has actually birthed the child. I know she has a kid, and I'm pretty sure she was the mother of that kid.
In America, I always wanted to see my brother again, my cousins, and just New York. The damn city sticks to you, you know. The man says, tell me about it. So yeah, that's why I came back. Now I go back and forth every 6 months or so. It's a long trip. You take a clipper? Yeah, I usually do a high-speed train from Gaza to Cairo, then catch another one from Cairo to Rabat or Casablanca. From there, a clipper to New York. The whole thing takes a week or so. Yeah, the train systems aren't as good here as they are in the Swana region. I heard they're working on solar planes.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I don't take the RevComs seriously. I feel like they're old hippie socialists that I just don't take seriously. No one ever talks about the RevComs. No, James Lindsay probably talks more about the RevComs than actual socialists talk about the RevComs. So, I don't know. I just don't get like a vibe from them where they're a group that I want to take seriously.
In Cairo? Yeah, there was a test launch yesterday. We may be flying again soon. That would be really something. I haven't flown since 2045. We lived long lives. We never know what will happen next. Yeah, when I first visited Palestine in 2016, I sat around a cafe in Jerusalem, and my friends and I dreamt of the day we could drive from Beirut to Jerusalem on a day trip. You helped make that reality. It's been an honor talking to you. And Hassan says, the train ride is even better than the car ride would have been. Thanks for this. It's fun to reminisce. So now I'm going to read a few pages from a later chapter that I wrote. So this is, the character is Kayla Puan. She's a trans woman. She's 17 years old. She grew up in one of the first established communes in the North Ironbound neighborhood of Newark. And she was not part of the revolution. She grew up in the New World. We have just finished talking about a little bit about the time that one of her fathers was abusive to her and some of the transformative accountability processes they had about that when she was a child. I say, how much contact do you have with strangers, people beyond those you grew up with? And she says,
listen, there's one thing I'll say for Emmy O'Brien. Julian says Emmy looks kind of like smiling, like kind of happy. There's one thing I'll say about Emmy O'Brien. When I saw Emmy O'Brien in person, it was at the Socialism 2023 conference. And so one of the presentations that I went to when I was there undercover was literally Emmy O'Brien's book launch. It was the book launch for the family abolition book that she was reading from earlier. Emmy O'Brien was glowing during that book launch. She was really happy. And it was like she was proud, and it was just like, it was one of those things where like you could tell that this was like a big moment for her and she was really proud of it. The reason I say that is it's not that the future is her happy place. It's that this is, I don't think people, like, I don't think especially conservatives really understand this. This is Emmy O'Brien's identity. This is intrinsic to who she is. This is not performative. She is not a useful idiot. This is her life's work. This is her thing. She is obsessed with this in the way that I am obsessed with the far left. But she's actually doing it. She's actually the one implementing. I'm just watching her implement it. This is her whole life. She's all about it. And so oftentimes conservatives think that these people don't really know what they want and that they're just losers and that this is, like, conservatives have a very specific view of these people. But these people like Emmy O'Brien, this is her purpose. It is her reason for being. And I don't think people understand how serious these people are about this. It's her magnificent obsession. This is what radical joy looks like. And these are the people, this is one of the reasons why we watch Emmy O'Brien so much. Because that's what makes them so dangerous. This is not an act. This is not a performance. This is innate to who they are. And when you find something you're passionate about, it fills up your cup. And you can tell just by looking at Emmy O'Brien. She's a wonderful teacher. You guys might not like her. You guys might not like her haircut. You guys might not like her voice. You guys might not like her ideas. But you cannot deny Emmy O'Brien is a wonderful teacher because she has made herself into a wonderful teacher of these ideas, because it is her entire world is pushing towards the revolution. Really think about that. We don't have very many people like this on our side in terms of this much passion, in terms of zealotry. That's a great word for it. Zealotry. And yeah, she is likable. Again, you might not like the way she looks. You don't have to like the way she looks. She is very likable. She's very gentle. She brings people along. We don't have people like this on our side. Which streamer? Let me know.
There are always travelers staying with us. Often as many as a dozen people, young people on their sojourn, refugees from disasters, people who weren't happy in their commune, or chaps who just don't like to settle. Some of them eventually become residents, and a lot of them move on. I was always excited to meet the travelers coming through when I was growing up. I would often eat with them and ask them lots of questions. Then I also know tons of people in the communes around Newark, New Jersey, and New York. There are also parties and conferences and tournaments of one sort or another. I mostly connect to people about trans stuff for my art. A lot of my life is online and video meetings and conferences and my art networks and planning. So I'm always chatting with people all over the world. Also, I think it's important to say that chaps who live here came from so many different places in their lives. North Ironbound, like a lot of communes, really values having people living here from everywhere. What do you hope to do down the track? I ask. Well, my sojourn is really exciting. I've been planning it with my crush mates who already did theirs. I told you about wanting to gestate. Maybe I'll have 2 kids? Maybe 1? I don't know. I'm thinking I'll try to teach photography. So I'm going to start a program in Essex County. That's a learning center, I ask. Yes, studying pedagogy and photography to teach kids. That'll be my 3-hour, and I think I'd like to do it in the afternoons because that's when the kids aren't sleepy. And I want to keep working in the garden, and maybe I'll run this trans discussion group I've been part of in Dutch Neck. You said you were involved in some planning, I say. A little. For over a year, I've been on this dispersed committee about logistics around hormone distribution continentally. I guess
This is going to tell us how Emmy O'Brien envisions the future society working, which is why it's always been on my list to read. Because, like, listen, she's using her imagination to say this is how socialism is going to work in the real world, and she's not just doing this based on her perception. Emmy O'Brien is deep in far left culture, so she's getting inspiration from everyone she's ever interacted with, everyone she's ever had a conversation with, all that stuff.
I got that from Joseph, really wanting to make sure everyone had the drugs they needed as something to be really deliberate and careful about. What is easy to make in the region, we do, but there is a lot we import. I've always felt pharmaceuticals were what was most important to get right. If we don't get the latest model of digits, no one will die. And because of transitioning, I saw how important hormones were, and there was room to help with planning on that front. If the reception is decent, I'm going to keep doing that during my sojourn. This week is the centennial of the Stonewall riots. Is there anything you want to say about that? My trans group goes to the party in Manhattan. It's a very big party. In my trans group, we've been reading about Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, and then about trans chaps during the insurrection. My group did a play, like a theater play last
During
week.
the insurrection.
We wrote it and took the production really seriously. I like parties overall. I do a lot of drugs usually at them. I got really into hallucinogens a couple of years ago at the Stonewall parties once my neuroscans checked out that it would be okay for me. You talked about your parents being communists. Are you a communist? I ask. I don't know what that means anymore, she says. I mean, I guess there are still some fascist enclaves and someone has to fight them. And I'm really unclear on what the hell is happening in Australia. It seems like that is a mess. And there's this whole property and wage and jobs and money and government thing going on there. I don't understand it. We need to sort that out.
So Australia apparently survived the global communist takeover. We were just talking the other day about how we need to ship all the stupid people to Australia. But apparently Australia is like the best place to be because it is on an island by itself. It survived the global communist takeover.
Out. I thought about...
By the way, when she said fascist just then, she means capitalist. That's what she means. There are people who still have private property.
Doing my service fighting there, but it felt very scary to think about. But isn't everyone a communist? What does it mean to be a communist today? Yeah. And I say, I don't know.
Yeah, Bill, I hate to break this to you, but we took a vote yesterday when you weren't here, and we decided that we are shipping all of the stupid people in America over to Australia. And we want to get you out, Bill. We want to get you out. We want to get all the smart people off of Australia. You can go to Asia, where there are smart people in Asia. You can come here. But what we're doing is we're collecting all of the dumb people in America, and we're sending them to the island where they can live, away from all of us. So we're going to get you out, Bill. It's going to be okay. No, we're going to get you out. It's going to be okay. You're going to be saved.
It seems like you appreciate your life. I do. I am lucky. I'm really very lucky. And you had something you wanted to read, a quote? Yeah, it belonged to Karim. He carried it with him. It was a book by this French Jew, Fourier. Karim was her father, who was killed in the Civil War. Writing in, it says in 1808, it was a passage Karim highlighted at the end. It was given to me after his death.
Yes.
Here it is.
Bill, after we rescue you from Australia, Bill, you can not only have one gun, you can have as many guns as you want. Help is on the way. It's going to be all right.
Do not be misled by superficial people who think that the invention of the laws of movement is just a theoretical calculation. Remember that it only requires 4 or 5 months to put into practice over a square league, an attempt which could even be completed by next summer, with the result that the whole human race would move into universal harmony. So your behavior should be governed from now on by the ease and proximity of this immense revolution. I like that. I think Karim knew the future was coming, and he had hope. We all need hope. Karim died to help make all this possible, and I miss him. I ask, is there anything else you want to share? No, I think this is good. I liked being interviewed. Thank you, Kayla. I really enjoyed this conversation. You are welcome. I was worried it would be weird. You are very old, but it was fun. Sad at parts. Thanks for interviewing me. Thank you, I say. So that's where I'll stop.
All right, hopefully we get a Q&A, because per usual, Q&A is like the best part. Q&A is where they say the quiet part out loud. Please make sure to mount the like button while they're doing whatever. See, Emmy O'Brien's got huge fucking tits. Look at this. Look. That's not hormone induced. I can't hear.
No, tell me about your. What do you imagine in asking it? I'm not totally sure what you're asking, what you're thinking about. I mean, getting to communism will be very hard. People have tried a few times. It hasn't worked, right? People have only made serious attempts in the context of serious civil war and state crisis and economic collapse. And then even then, surviving is really difficult. Turns out it doesn't really work in one country. So, there's...
Doesn't work in one country.
There's a lot of obstacles. What's the glaring problem of capitalism? Well, that it's going to kill us all. Yeah, I talked about this in the early...
Did someone say clip? We also got socialists on video a couple weeks ago talking about how capitalism was a death machine.
There's a lot of obstacles. What's the glaring problem of capitalism? Well, that it's going to kill us all. Yeah, I talked about this in the earlier classes, and it's something that I think about a lot, that, when I teach a class on capitalism. Teaching isn't the main thing I do, but I teach one class at a time. We spend a lot of time really trying to understand how capitalism fits together as a social system where everyone is kind of compelled to act, where capitalists have to figure out how to keep competing on the market in order to be successful. They have to be profitable for their businesses to survive, where states have to figure out how to keep the economy going for tax revenue to be up, right? If investment goes down, tax revenue collapses and states can't do anything. And where everyone else needs to figure out how to get a job in order to pay rent and survive. And so everyone is compelled to act in the service of profit, whether we want to or not. And then the freedom that we have is very limited. It's like what we do in our free time, right? But it can't disrupt the economy too much or it all falls apart for us. And this whole machine is put together so that no one controls it. I mean, we talk about the ruling class and they do rule a huge chunk of society and the media and lots of things. But what they don't rule is capitalism. They own capitalism, but they are subject to demands of profitability to keep their businesses going, to keep their fortunes up, to compete with each other, that we have built a system that is outside of all of our control. And it's a system that is rapidly destroying the planet and annihilating the basis of this planet to be able to support us in many, many ways. And is producing just tremendous misery around the world, as well as tremendous wealth, right, simultaneously. And that our survival fundamentally will depend on figuring out how to get out of the social system where profit is the driving, reigning basis of organizing human activity. And how we do that, I mean, I have a lot to say, but I certainly don't know how to do that. And
all right, let me just end that clip there. That was delightful, Emmy. We appreciate that. By the way, ME stands for Michelle. Michelle is like, this is why I say this is a woman that took testosterone. Like, her real name is Michelle O'Brien. ME is her non-binary name. Let's see. Who has a more revolutionary rack, Emmy O'Brien or Sophie Lewis? I mean, both of them have pretty big boobs. Sophie has actually shown her boobs several times on Instagram, though. So if you want to go to Sophie's Instagram page, she actually just Sophie dishes the goods. I've never seen Emmy O'Brien do that, but Emmy O'Brien did block me on Twitter. Sophie at least doesn't block me. Sophie actually unblocked me on Twitter one time. When I said, Sophie, can you unblock me? I'm not going to say you're a pedophile or anything. And she said, I already unblocked you, Carlin, because Sophie's secretly in love with me. I think we can all admit that. Sophie Lewis doesn't want to admit it, but Sophie Lewis is secretly in love with me, and she knows that my love for her is true. Emmy O'Brien hates me, though. Probably because Emmy O'Brien knows that Sophie is in love with me, and Emmy O'Brien blocked me on Twitter a long time ago. I've never looked at her Instagram, though, so I don't know if she's shown off her boobs or anything. Help, I'm getting radicalized to embrace Zionism as a capitalism defense mechanism. No. Just because these people oppose Zionism and Israel doesn't mean we have, like, and just because, like, we are not conservatives, okay? We are not conservatives. We are not just going to react to something. We're not just going to be against something just because our enemies are against it. You got to keep in mind that they support Israel for they oppose Zionism, they oppose Israel for a very specific reason. And that's not the same reason we have. I oppose what Israel is doing because I think Israel is perpetrating a genocide against the Palestinians, and I think it's bad, and I don't like it, and I don't like that we're sending Israel all that money. I don't think the United States owes Israel 1 red cent. I don't like the influence of Israeli money in the United States, particularly in United States politics. They don't care about any of this shit. So don't rebel against something just because they like it, because that's what conservatives do.
I don't think anyone does. I think it will have to be discovered in the future that every generation and every wave of struggle has to develop and invent new strategies, new ways of working, new tactics, that if we recycle and just import strategies of the past, they were defeated at some point, right? They don't work. They won't work again in the way that they used to. We can learn from the past, but that learning has to be a refashioning and a transformation, a sort of what will be useful will not be easy to predict ahead of time. And I think we see that in each wave of struggle, the kind of ways that people have to really create new forms. I don't know how we might get out of capitalism, but I do think there's going to be many, many escalating crises in the coming decades, including crises where nation states and the economy really aren't working. And those will be moments that it's possible for large numbers of people to do what we can't do right now, which is to really make a decision to break from capitalist society altogether. and we depict like one such scenario. Terrible things happen to get there in our book. Quite traumatic and awful things happen through the 2040s. And I think there will be moments that it will be within humanity's power to get out of capitalism altogether. And whether we do that or not, who knows? You know. Yeah, capitalism produces a lot of other problems, but I think the climate crisis is a very, very big one right now. Yeah. And if people could introduce yourself as well, that would be great.
Bot, remember, Sophie is learning Arabic now. So maybe you should tweet at Sophie in Arabic. I know you've been what Bot means by the language of the global south is Spanish. But I know that Sophie has been taking Arabic lessons because she posted about it. And so maybe you should try tweeting at her in Arabic. I'm sorry we can't hear the questions, guys, but hopefully she'll repeat it.
This is a very, very big question. The subtitle of my book is Capitalism and the Communizing of Care. That like one of the ways that I theorize family abolition, I'm not alone in this, is that the care necessary for human flourishing should be freely available throughout society. That right now, many of the things we need are very hard to find outside of the family. That the family is where we are most likely to get sort of like care, necessary care as infants.
So this is the basis of Abolish the Family. Again, and I mentioned this earlier, but just in case new people have joined, they're not saying to abolish the biological family because they hate kids. Emmy O'Brien has a kid. That's not the reason. The reason is they believe that in our current society, we are limited to the resources that our family is able to financially afford. So because some families have more resources than others, some families have more private property than others, some families are more rich than others, and that means some families are poor. That creates a hierarchy. The people who are on the top of the hierarchy are able to afford whatever resources and healthcare and stuff that they need. The people who come from poorer families or middle class families are on the bottom of the hierarchy. They can't afford as much healthcare or as much resources, right? So what she's saying is the reason we want to abolish the family is to make a society that people can receive the care they need that is not dependent on the family that they were biologically born into. That's the whole idea of what universal health care is. And there are other things that go along with it as well, but they believe that as long as the nuclear family exists, it will perpetuate this system that creates a hierarchy where people will only be able to have the resources that align with the amount of money that their particular family makes. Let's listen to that part again.
Of care. That like one of the ways that I theorize family abolition, I'm not alone in this, is that the care necessary for human flourishing should be freely available throughout society. That right now, many of the things we need are very hard to find outside of the family. That the family is where we are most likely to get sort of like care, necessary care as infants, when we're sick, when we're old. And alternatives outside of the family of market exchange and state programs are often quite poor. And so one way of theorizing family abolition is fighting for, winning, imagining, whatever we want to call it, a society where...
I don't think she is now, but she definitely had a partner at some point, and I think that I heard her one time say in a talk that they live in the same building. Because, again, they have a kid. So I don't think she's married, but she definitely had some sort of thing at some point.
Where the necessary forms of care are widely available to people in a way that's unconditional on the kind of family choices that they make.
It's not about loving the state the way you love your family. It's about loving everyone in your community the way you love your family. It's about love not being restricted based on biological kinship. So they don't vision it as though it's like the state that you're in love with. They envision it that everyone takes care of everyone else and everyone extends the same level of care and resources to everyone else as they would extend to. So yeah, I mean, I hope that helps. This is what collective care is.
So that the material and to some
we'll all
extent
be
spiritual or
surrogates for each other.
psychological
Exactly.
dimensions of human flourishing don't depend on who you decide to love and who you happen to be related to. And that's a tall order, right? Like who we happen to be related to is the main determinant of our life chances in the world right now. And to actually imagine a society where it had no effect on your life chances requires a fundamental overturning of private property. So, you know,
and it requires an overturning of private property in order to be able to achieve that in their world. That means capitalism. You know, so it sounds like a noble thing, right? It sounds like we just want to have a society where everyone takes care of everyone else and everyone just looks out for everyone else. And it doesn't need to be dependent on what family you're born into. You know your needs are going to be taken care of. It sounds like something that's innocent and pure. It's just like universal health care. Wouldn't it be great if everything was just paid for and everything was covered and we didn't have to worry about anything and all that stuff? And it does sound great. It sounds great. But then you consider the ramifications of that. You play that out to its logical end conclusion, because she just said, in order to achieve this, we need to overthrow private property. No, National Socialism still had private property. They still had private property. In fact, they incentivized home ownership. They aren't going to incentivize home ownership. They're going to be assigning you where you live. Let's listen to that part about private property again.
Imagine a society where it had no effect on your life chances requires a fundamental overturning of private property. So, you know, you alluded to...
It requires a fundamental overthrowing of private property. So Human Centipede says, I just saw an opinion piece where they said it's unfair to read to your kids at home. That was in the New York Times. This is why we listen to Socialism, guys, because Human Centipede understands how this opinion piece, it's unfair to read to your kids at home, relates to what Emmy O'Brien is saying. So what Emmy O'Brien is saying is, the things that you have available to you should not depend on the family that you're biologically born into. If some families have more private property than other families, that is fundamentally unfair. What the New York Times opinion piece is going to say is kids who have their parents read to them at home have an unfair advantage over kids who don't have their parents read to them at home. That's what the argument is that kids who have people read to them at home are unfairly advantaged because not everyone has that, and that creates a hierarchy. The kids who have people read to them at home are up here. The kids who don't have people read to them at home are down here. That's why it's unfair. And you know, because we watch family abolition stuff, it comes from this. Does everyone understand this? Let me know if you have questions.
This, but I really see the overcoming of the family and the overcoming of capitalism as necessarily implying and requiring each other, as being different dimensions of the same process. You also alluded to gender and sexual freedom, like in Everything for Everyone, like, you know, half our characters are trans, and the world, like gender diversity and sexual diversity, has become much more widespread and much more widely available.
They abolished the gender binary.
As there's a breakdown in the division of labor, gender division of labor, and a massive overcoming in the divisions between...
A breakdown of the gender division of labor. The gender division of labor is also called the patriarchy. This is what I mean when they say they want to abolish the gender binary. The goal of queer Marxism fundamentally is not to groom kids, it's not to sexualize kids, it's not to make kids into drag queens like James Lindsay said in his Moms for Liberty speech last month. The goal of queer Marxism is to abolish the gender binary. The gender binary is men and women. That's what that means. They believe that capitalism put men in the workplace where they made all the money and had access to all the power, and women in the home doing the unpaid labor of raising the nuclear family. What Emmy O'Brien just said is, in our future society, we basically got rid of the gender binary and we got rid of this power structure where men are in the workplace making all the money and women are in the home. She basically laid that out. Let's listen again.
And requiring each other as being different dimensions of the same process. You also alluded to gender and sexual freedom, like in Everything for Everyone, like, you know, half our characters are trans, and the world, like gender diversity and sexual diversity, has become much more widespread and much more widely available to people. As there's a breakdown in the division of labor, gender division of labor, and a massive overcoming in the divisions between like the private household and public society. And the social transformations have really opened up the space for a lot more people to be able to.
So it also overcame the private household. I say this all the time when I say that the goal of abolishing the gender binary is not only an attack on capitalism, it's fundamentally to abolish the nuclear family. The nuclear family is the privatized household. Mizakan, who's already read this book, says, if I remember right, non-binary genders stabilized at 40% of the population. Isn't that crazy? They abolished the gender binary in the future book about the socialist utopia. Who would have thought that that was one of their goals? Does anyone else talk, like a serious question, has anyone else heard any other commentator on the internet talk about the fact that queer Marxism, the goal of it is to abolish the gender binary? Is that still just me? Is anyone else talking about this? If anyone else is actually talking about this, we should talk to them.
Or gender in a diverse way. And that, in turn, is one of the ways that I sort of tried to theorize family abolition. So one criteria is a free society would be one where our well-being wouldn't depend on who we happen to be related to. Another that's in some ways as challenging is to try to think about what sorts of social conditions could we imagine or fight for or win that would support all trans children, right? Including trans children born to bigoted parents, since we can't, you know, we're never going to like brainwash all people or convince everyone to love trans people. People should be able to have all sorts of thoughts and feelings, and that's fine. But what happens to trans children in that setting? And, you know, in our world right now, the only means of sort of intervening in the nearly total authority that parents have are very violent systems of state punishment.
The total authority that parents have. It kind of sounds like she's attacking parental rights, doesn't it? Bigoted parents means capitalist parents who don't want their kids to be trans. Again.
Could we imagine or fight for or win that would support all trans children? Right? Including trans children born to bigoted parents, since we can't, you know, we're never going to like brainwash all people or convince everyone to love trans people. People should be able to have all sorts of thoughts and feelings, and that's fine. But what happens to trans children in that setting? And, you know, in our world right now, the only means of sort of intervening in the nearly total authority that parents have are very violent systems of state punishment. And beginning to imagine the social forms that can actually enable, support, foster trans children to continue to be in relation with their parents, even when their parents are bigots. Like, that strikes me as a very good starting point for trying to think about justice. And if we were to take that seriously and win that in terms of reforms or revolutionary change in any meaningful sense, it could massively expand the availability of gender diversity amongst children, which is really essential in my own thinking about human freedom. You have a few more minutes. Yes. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'll clip this later. Don't worry about it. I got it marked on the stream.
To the novel, yeah. Right.
I can't hear what he's saying, guys, so we're just going to have to wait for her to actually answer the question. Remember, she is teaching a college class. And it sounds like she went around and spoke to a lot of classes while she was there. Isn't that interesting? Denison University in Ohio.
So I could tell you some about how we depict this world in our own book. Certainly, it's not property, and the book maintains a level of rich cultural and religious diversity in people's lives that I think is a very important value for a man and I. And there might be hierarchies. My politics these days are not ones where hierarchy is the main problem necessarily.
Interesting.
But the hierarchies are really a fundamentally different sort than the shape they take in our worlds. But I think ultimately that my point is that these kinds of questions are ones that everyone in collective struggle can ask of each other. That your answers, the extent to which we are in any sort of movement around making the world better, our answers to questions like that are things that we should be asking and thinking about. And not thinking about as a plan or as a blueprint or as a program, but thinking about as a way of articulating what our desires are. So like, I'm a religious person. I follow a Buddhist teacher. We have a hierarchy in our community. I feel very comfortable with that. I really don't mind at all. Meanwhile,
I'm sorry, what? I didn't know Emmy O'Brien was a Buddhist. Isn't that interesting? Because I keep hearing from conservatives that socialists are all atheists, and I keep trying to tell them, I'm like, they're not all atheists. A lot of them believe in different things. They might not be Christians. And by the way, conservatives seem to think that if you're not a Christian, you're an atheist. Like there is no other belief system in the world. But isn't that interesting? Emmy O'Brien, far left, anarcho-communist, abolish the family socialist, is a Buddhist. So don't tell me their number one goal is to get rid of religion. Don't tell me that. I don't give a fuck if it's Western. Like, the Western thing, again, the Western thing is conservative talking point. It's a right-wing talking point. It's not a left-wing talking point. The left wing, every once in a while, every once in a blue moon, we hear them say Western something. But for the most part, they don't care. Yeah, I thought that they were a Gnostic sex cult. If anyone's in the Gnostic sex cult, according to Emmy O'Brien, according to James Lindsay, it would be Emmy O'Brien. Yep, they're Christian communists too. There absolutely are Christian communists. 100%.
my boss docks my pay if I do something he doesn't like. I don't like that at all. I think that's a really bad hierarchy, And this is about my own experience of the world, right? And similarly, in the course of struggle, we discover perhaps that there are certain relationships where we trust someone to represent us, right? We count on someone to be a leader.
No, they're not. No. They're really not. Remember yesterday that James said the people that are true believers that really know this stuff can talk about the theory all day? Well, Emmy O'Brien does, and all she talks about is capitalism all day. Indeed. Yup, good observation. Yeah, liberation theology is in the Catholic Church is basically communist theology. Exactly.
And that becomes of value to us collectively, right? That hierarchies might emerge in a way that reflects a certain kind of collective will, and that other kinds of hierarchies become inimical to our survival, to our well-being, to the possibility of our future, and we fight to destroy those and transform those. And that's the task before us all collectively. And you're welcome to read the book for how we parse that out, but like how you parse it out is a different question. And may we one day arrive at a future together where we are arguing in the streets and have a chance to try to figure out what sort of hierarchies we're willing to tolerate and what sort we are not. Okay.
Again, guys, I can't hear what they're saying, so we're just gonna have to wait for Emmy O'Brien to answer. I apologize.
The way we are now is not natural or inherent to the human endeavor.
Oh!
Yeah, this is after decades of some serious crisis, where the world we have now is in ruin in many ways. Yes, so long as capitalism and capitalist states function for people, they probably will persist without much difficulty.
Capitalist states.
They do not function for everyone. It's very clear. There are large numbers of people around the world who do not have housing, who don't have citizenship, who live in prisons or refugee camps. But it works for many people, right? And it works for enough people that there is no revolution happening tomorrow. But the part of a revolutionary process is
Oh, God. She would kick his ass so badly. Emmy O'Brien is very, very smart. Sophie Lewis is very, very... This is why they're so good at what they do. This is why we watch them so much. She would kick James's ass even probably worse than I would. It would be glorious to watch. In fact, can we start a petition? Can we start a petition for an Emmy O'Brien, James Lindsay debate? Emmy O'Brien would never do it, though. Emmy O'Brien, I don't think, would lower herself to do it, because I think that she thinks it would be lowering herself. She won't interact with the riffraff. Yeah, she would laugh. She would laugh. It's true. It's true. Hey, Jane, thanks for the super chat. I appreciate it. Hey, guys, we do have a super chat goal that we're trying to meet of $100. That was a pretty modest goal just to cover my time that I spend streaming this stuff for hours and hours and hours every single day. If you appreciate tonight's stream, if you appreciate the breakdowns of the ideas, please throw in a $5 super chat, a $10 super chat. More money if you want to send me more money, that's cool. But if we can get like 10 more people to throw in $5, that meets the super chat goal, and that keeps me in business. As a reminder, I am 100% grassroots funded by you guys. Without you guys supporting the work I'm doing, it doesn't get done. All right? We got a few more minutes of this. Let's finish up this presentation.
Recognizing that capitalism produces enormous crisis as an unsustainable and highly chaotic system. And it's persisted as long as it has at great cost to the world. And the extent to which people will build a different kind of society will also be the extent to which people have been transformed in the process of struggle itself and over protracted crisis. So we depict that a little bit in the book, and there are other ways of thinking about that. Yes? Could you introduce yourself? Mm-hmm. Yeah, where in the Soviet Union did you grow up? Yeah.
Is she getting pushback? Hey, thanks, Tolkien fan. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
dichotomizing and continuing these binary forces.
Hang on. Thank you, Mountain Goddess. Where would you place Kamala's policies and ideas? Kamala Harris is not a communist. Kamala Harris is not a socialist. Everyone should stop listening literally to every single commentator who is saying that Kamala Harris is a communist or a socialist. Kamala Harris is not. Kamala Harris is a run-of-the-mill progressive that is an opportunist, that is taking advantage of an opportunity, but there is no universe in which Kamala Harris is actually a communist. There is no universe in which Kamala Harris is actually a socialist. Again, the real communists and socialists protest against her. They denounce her. They hate her. They will never vote for her. And so she's a run-of-the-mill Democrat / progressive that just wants power, is my answer. Kamala Harris is a neoliberal. Exactly. Well, you might be having fun, but at the same time, you are lying to people and confusing them. And every single time someone calls Kamala Harris a communist, to include Donald Trump, to include Elon Musk, to include James Lindsay, to include Charlie Kirk, to include Dan Bongino, to include everyone at the Daily Wire, to include every fucking person, you guys are making it impossible to actually fight real communists and leftists. You understand that, right? You're all having fun and games. You are... Every single time someone calls Kamala Harris a communist, they're handing the left a win. The left gets stronger every single time someone calls her a communist. The left achieves more and gains more power every single time someone calls Kamala Harris a communist. So I hope the fun is worth it. I hope the memes are worth it. You guys are handing victory to the real fucking communists. You're handing them victory on a silver platter. There is no opposition to the real left. No one even knows who they are. No one covers them at all because everyone's talking about Kamala Harris being a communist. So remember, guys, when the socialists win and the Marxists win and they overthrow capitalism and we all descend into the Marxist utopia, just remember you had a really great time sending out memes about Kamala Harris. Hey, thanks, Status Persona, for the super chat. We need to fight back in this cultural revolution to take power back. You inspire me, Carlin. Thank you. Hey, I really appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat. Just keep coming and learning. I mean, I see her writing stuff about me, but I don't actually read it. Like, she wants me to read it. So it's like, no, I'm not going to, like, no one's even looking at what she's writing anyway. So I'm just like, let that crazy cunt into the ether and she can scream and cry all she wants. And I don't really care. I don't really care.
Yeah. So communism for me is the overcoming of class society. That is the task. That is the task of human survival, human flourishing. And there is no other word for it. That is the word for it. And that it was also the word for a state regime that dominated a chunk of the world in the 20th century is complex and important, and how to reconcile and think about those histories. There's a joke amongst the sectarian left that you can parse someone's different socialist faction by what year they think the revolution failed in the Soviet Union. Some people think it failed in 1921. Some people think it failed in 1930. Some people for 1935. Some people in 1956. Some people in 1992. Right, and that this is a complex question. I am of a political tendency that thinks that the revolution in Russia was a massive step forward for humanity. That the revolutionary process that unfolded, that brought an end to World War I, and that brought an end to capitalism for a time in what became the Soviet Union, was a massive effort by working class people towards revolution. And that what ended up happening out of it was
Stalin, I promise you.
in the exigencies of survival in a capitalist world.
Hang on. Christian, Was feeling bummed out at the start, but I'm better now. These people can be defeated, although broader awareness is critical. All respect. Hey, I appreciate that. Listen, in order to generate broader awareness, we all need to be learning as much as we can and teaching as much as we can. That's why we do these streams, to give people an environment where they can learn as much as they can. And then hopefully I am able to give you guys talking points where you can go out and teach. We're going to be doing a lot more stuff around that in the coming months. I've got some big plans because I'm sick of James Lindsay's shit. And James Lindsay is holding us back, and he's being counterproductive, and we need to counter all his bullshit. I've got a lot of ideas that I've been kind of mulling about all year. I've been a little bit lazy about it though. I've been distracted. But it's time to get back in the game, and it's time to start taking this seriously again. And here we go. We're going to do a lot of stuff. But I appreciate the super chat.
In an internal counter-revolutionary process that unfolded within the Soviet Union, in a reassertion of class society, among other things, in the complete decimation of working class leadership in the Civil War.
Yeah, guys, I will teach you how to teach this stuff. And to be clear, people in my community have gone and given lectures in their communities. I've given them video clips to use. You can use everything I create. I do ask that you credit me just to help other people find my stuff. But like, if you want to go teach this stuff, please use my talking points. Please use my articles. Please use my video clips. Use all of it. If you want help, if you want me to look at something, I'll look at it. I'm going to do another round of how to speak socialist classes. I think I'm going to break it down a little bit more this time. And so, you know, it's been kind of a constant learning process for me to figure out how to teach this stuff. But the goal is that I want to train all of you to teach it so that we have an army of people teaching it. That's the entire point of all of this. Thanks, Sam. I'll look at it later.
What ended up happening out of it was what some scholars call state capitalism, that it was a form of capitalist development managed and owned by the state. And that actually the legacy of the major state socialist projects of the 20th century was to bring capitalist development to parts of Asia that capitalists themselves would not develop. So to overcome feudalism. And that isn't what they intended. That isn't what they wanted to do, but it's what was actually accomplished over the course of it. I do not think that's inherent to the revolutionary project, to the banner of communism. I think that the main form anti-communism takes in the world today is that horrific abuse is an inherent outgrowth of trying to change things. As far as dualisms and Hegelian dialectics, I might have some differences, but it's complex and it's not simple. That I think neither, it's both misses something to completely dismiss the communist revolutions of the 20th century as having nothing to do with communism, and it's also a mistake to simply embrace them uncritically as being like beyond reproach or in need of constant defense. Terrible, terrible things happened in the Soviet Union that should not be defended. Yes.
Historically, all of the composition of that culture was under the pretext that if you were not a part of it itself, if you're not similar, you would go to hell and you will not joy after you die. And that was often the case for all the death and destruction, even before capitalism was so widely sort of accepted as like a worldwide system of trade. Where does that really fit in under the communism umbrella, where these cultural systems that want want to be bigger, want to be more powerful, regardless of property, but spiritually, culturally, how does that fit?
Yeah, feudalism produced some intense imperialist ideologies. There's no question of that, right? We can look at the history of the Crusades and this expansion of multiple religious empires across Eurasia over an extended period. That human horrors are not unique to capitalism, and that their overcoming is a question, right? we preserve religion in the book. Like, I'm a Buddhist, a man's a Muslim. Like,
They preserve
many of the
religion.
characters have religious and spiritual practices.
They preserve
but
religion.
there's no question that the kind of imperialist, institutionalized violence really structured into many religions in the world today is untenable and relies on property relations and exploitation and domination in ways that necessarily have to be combated and destroyed. Okay, so we're already over. So let's close out. I want to come up with some inspiring words, but they're not occurring to me right now. If you want to buy a book, I'll sign it happily, and if not, that's fine. And thank you again to Michael for bringing me, and it's really a great honor to be here and to be chatting with you all.
All right, so that was a really great first part of this little Emmy O'Brien marathon, guys. We're gonna watch one more video from Emmy O'Brien. It's shorter, so don't worry. It's about 40 minutes long, and this one is a little bit older. But I do want to give us a little bit more tonight. Now, as a reminder, right after this stream tonight, I will be doing an after party space on Twitter where people can come and actually, and I really want people to come. I want to hear from you guys. Like, the Socialism Saturday streams are basically me talking and breaking stuff down and analyzing them, and we do a little bit of back and forth in the chat, but like there's not a whole ton of back and forth in the chat just because of the nature of the thing. I'm going to be trying this new thing where we're going to do an after show on a Twitter space, so you guys can come. I want to hear your opinions. I want to hear what you thought about all this. We'll do a little bit of a breakdown. We'll do further analysis. So I've got it scheduled for 10 p.m. That might be when it happens. It might happen a little bit before. It might happen a little bit later. It does depend on when we actually do end up ending the stream tonight. Like I said, we do have one more video I want to watch. But I want to start doing my own Twitter spaces because, quite frankly, I always have issues when I go into other people's Twitter spaces, so I'm doing it myself. And that way they can be nice and they can run the way I want them to, and we can all have a good conversation. So that's going to be happening tonight after the stream, but we're going to get back into it for another video. We're going to be watching this interview that Emmy O'Brien did, I think, about her book. This was uploaded 8 months ago as part of a podcast discussing the new book. Emmy O'Brien received her master's in social work from Hunter College, CUNY, and completed a PhD in sociology at NYU. After 2 years of psychoanalytic training at the Psychoanalytic Training Institute, she is now enrolled in psychoanalysis studies at a newly established clinic, Pulsion. I did not know that, Emmy O'Brien. I did not know that. Let's look up their clinic. As well as her clinical practice, she spent years coordinating the NYC Trans Oral History Project. Blah, 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 blah. Lots of stuff there. Let's get this party started, and hopefully we can finish up relatively succinctly. And I need to use the little socialist room, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this play. Let me know if I miss anything. I'm going to go use the little socialist room, and I will be right back.
Hi, Emmy. I'm so happy to have you here again to Rendering Unconscious.
My pleasure. The third time now. I love it.
And the third time, and there's going to be many more with this amazing work that you're doing. Today, we're here to talk about your book, Family Abolition. And this is such an amazing book. And now I get to gush because we're recording. I feel like people hear the term abolition and they hear the term family abolition, but they don't really know exactly what it means. And I was one of those people. And so I really needed this book to like really understand. And it's such an amazing, well-researched book. And you really go into like the history of the ideas and the history of politics over centuries and how it's evolved over time and bringing up us to this present moment. And you cite such amazing like historical moments along the way and like events that are in recent years like COVID and George Floyd and Trump holding up this baby, and there's just so many, and it's really like it really helps to like bring it to life, like things that we've been experiencing now, and then helps kind of like pave the way for like how we could look at a different future and how this like capitalist nightmare hellscape that we all live in isn't the only way, and how there can be different ways to look at care and things like that. But of course, you're going to talk about all of that. And maybe I was thinking maybe we should start with the way you start the book, like with what happened in Mexico.
Sure. So, a really central part of this book is thinking about how people care for each other in the midst of mass rebellions. I call it insurgent social reproduction. And that becomes really essential later to how I theorize
Social
family
reproduction.
abolition or the overcoming of the private household. And so I open the book with a scene of a mass insurrection, a rebellion in 2006 in Oaxaca, Mexico, when the police repressed a teacher's strike. And it ended up leading to 8 months of mass occupations and barricades and taking over radio stations and all these things. And one of the participants on the radio said, transmitting from the Oaxaca commune, in reference to the Paris commune of 1871. And what I'm interested in the Paris commune, in the Oaxaca commune, I talk about the Paris commune later, I draw from an article by Barucha Peller, and it emphasizes the role that women play in social reproduction living on the barricades. So they set up.
Remember, guys, social reproduction, if you missed this earlier in the stream, social reproduction theory is the idea that social systems will reproduce themselves until they're disrupted. The reason the left wants to abolish the nuclear family is because they believe the nuclear family socially reproduces capitalism. When they say the left wants to control the means of production, they don't mean the factories anymore, although they do want to control those too. They mean the people. The family is the means of production of capitalism. They cannot abolish capitalism until they get rid of the nuclear family. That's why we care about social reproduction theory.
Barricades because their neighborhoods were being attacked every night by paramilitaries and fascists, and sometimes by police and military, the Mexican military. And so they were living on the barricades. And women brought their children with them to the barricades. They did educational workshops together. They made coffee. They cooked food. They had radio transmitters at the barricades to communicate with each other. So rather than doing social reproduction within the private household, it became an activity to expand and reproduce the revolution, the rebellion that was happening.
When the women on the Oaxaca commune created a little commune where they left their nuclear families and they started preparing food on the commune, they started socially reproducing the revolution because they left the capitalist nuclear family, literally in this case, and they went to the commune and they were reproducing communism on the commune. That was a disruption to the nuclear family.
And that part of the counter-revolution, as well as intense and brutal state repression, was husbands demanding their wives come back home to cook for them. And this kind of dynamic, this kind of contradiction really informs the rest of the book. That the private household as a way of living is really quite miserable, doesn't make much sense in a lot of ways. It's on many levels, it's adapted to the nuclear family in particular is adapted as a survival mechanism in the conditions of capitalism. And that anytime there's mass rebellions, you start seeing large numbers of people taking care of each other beyond the structure of the nuclear household. And that's an expansion of care in many ways. And that in those contexts, the reassertion of the family can end up being a counterinsurgent, counter-revolutionary force.
Yeah, it's so important because the family is kind of like the first institution, right, that we're born into. And as you talk about here, like this nuclear family is really new and kind of created by and created with the form of capitalism that we live in. But, obviously it's not like this in all cultures. Obviously, it's not always been like this. It's actually very new, recent kind of invention. And I even remember, like, it's so messed up how things are so pathologized is even maybe, and especially in like our training, because I remember even in like becoming a psychologist and getting a PhD, it's like the idea of like living with an extended family is
when they say it takes a village to raise a child, they literally mean that. You know what? Time upholds white supremacy, Tronwick, and so don't worry. You don't want to be a white supremacist, do you? Don't worry about time. You made it. It's all good.
Pathologize even in school, like they're like, oh, you know, what's wrong with him or her if they're still living at home or living with grandparents or things like this.
Yeah.
And it's just wild. They're like, and then we were taught like, well, maybe in certain cultures that's accepted, but like in this culture it's not. And it's just, yeah, it's just absolutely wild that it gets integrated into our training like that as like mental health professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I mean, I, as a social worker and a psychoanalyst in formation, like the family is just so central to how the field understands the human psyche and how what we define as normal.
Absolutely. And like I said, you talk about such like current events that really help like flesh out your arguments and the perspective. And starting with Corona, really showing how like it's impossible for like two people to take care of their children and work and everything from home, and when all of that was happening, and showing like which classes of people ended up really suffering the most. Do you want to talk a little bit more about
Just
that?
impossible for parents to parent their children
So
under
I
capitalism.
provide 3 definitions of family in the first 3 chapters, and in each case I have a sort of recent phenomenon to help illustrate and think about it. And the first chapter is about the family as a private household, as a unit of social reproduction and a unit of property. So it's the family and this.
The family as a unit of social reproduction and a unit of private property. Again.
Think about it. And the first chapter is about the family as a private household, as a unit of social reproduction and a unit of property. So it's the family, and this comes out of social reproduction theory, a current of Marxist feminism that evolved out of the domestic labor debates of Marxist feminism in the 1970s. And the basic argument of social reproduction theory is that there's a huge amount of labor that needs to happen for workers to be able to show up at their workplace. Everyone needs to be fed and clothed and raised from childhood, and that some of that labor happens in schools or hospitals or laundromats, and some of that labor is unwaged and happens within the home. And so recognizing all the forms of unwaged labor that happen within the home.
Well, see, this is the problem when you come into my chat and you start shitposting. Because you sound really stupid when you do this, which is why I've asked repeatedly, and I think I've asked you specifically repeatedly, not to do this. The people who have been here for this entire stream have heard me say on at least 2 occasions that Emmy O'Brien has a kid. She has a kid. She is not childless. She doesn't want to abolish the family because she doesn't have a family and she just wants to destroy it because she doesn't have it. That is a bullshit, quite frankly, kindergarten level conservative talking point. At one time she did. At one time she did have a partner, and now they just live in the same building to co-parent the kid. So you're coming in here and you're shitposting in my chat, which I've repeatedly asked you not to do. And you look stupid. You look stupid. You look retarded. She did not become an abolish the family activist because the relationship fell apart. That's not what happened. So if you're going to continue acting like a fool in my chat, I'm going to ban you again like I did the last time. The only reason you're even here is because I unbanned everyone in my chat. I removed you from my chat a long ass time ago. So either you're here to learn or you're here, or you can get the fuck out. But I don't want to see this bullshit conservative low-level fucking kindergarten analysis. We are better than that. If you are not here to learn, go watch the fucking Daily Wire.
And my emphasis on this was the kind of impossibility of a household functioning on its own. That I looked at the experience.
I literally just explained to you what's wrong with your analysis. I literally just stated it very clearly. Everyone in the chat right now understands what's wrong with your analysis. The only one who doesn't understand is you, because you aren't fucking listening. So let me make it real clear. You are wrong on every single level of everything you've put in my chat so far tonight. You are objectively wrong. And if you keep shitposting in my chat, if you keep whining, I am going to ban you. Shut the fuck up and start listening. No! Shut the fuck up and start listening. Or go back to, even better, bye, 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 goodbye, you're banned again, don't come back. Sorry for the outburst, but I have a very short temper when it comes to stupid people who are constantly causing nonsense. He just got banned, he won't be back.
Experience of parents during the COVID-19 shutdowns, when they happened and during the time that they happened, for how extraordinarily difficult it was for people to raise their children. And this really drew attention to the vast infrastructure of social support that people rely on. That for middle class people, that's often a whole set of commodity purchase service activities of buying cooked food, having your clothes cleaned. For wealthier families, it's about nannies. And for working class families, it can be a real crisis. It can be very difficult to maintain a household, to keep a family going. And people often rely on extended care networks and extended family when they're able to. And the difficulty of the COVID-19 shutdowns really drew attention to how our fantasy of a sort of self-sustaining, independent household that can function on its own is a property form. It's not actually how households can possibly function. Yeah,
and I love how you point out that family abolition is about expanding care. It's not like just like getting rid of the family. It's like expanding the notion of what the family can be so that more and more people can access care. And like you said too, I think I mentioned it before we were recording. I'm so glad that we're recording this on a holiday, family holiday weekend, and it's going to come out during this holiday season, because being in the mental health field, it's like the season is not the jolly season. This is the season where people get depressed and they have family conflicts and they have to be around people that they don't like or they don't get along with, that have abused them. And there's a lot of rise of suicide. So like I never take off during the holidays, like Christmas and stuff. I'm always like working up until the day and then like right after, because a lot of people really that need someone to talk to during that time, because it's such a stressful time. It's not like a joyful time for everyone. For me, it's like most people, I'm like, who are these people with these happy families? But I know they exist somewhere, apparently.
Right? That's a matter of debate. I'm not sure. Yeah. Certainly they do in psychology textbooks. So.
Right.
Yeah.
In advertising.
Right. In popular culture. Yeah, the ideology of family is something I only
just a
touch on.
podcast host.
The second chapter engages it a little bit, but I mostly maintain a pretty materialist analysis throughout. But the level of indoctrination and propaganda and mass media around the family as our sole space of a decent life, as our only chance to not end up alone. And to some extent, that has a real material truth to it. Like living alone can be very challenging, or living without a nuclear family, but trying to find other ways of getting support in the world. And that's a lot of what my book is critiquing, the limitations of the lack of care and support available to people outside of the nuclear family, and the need to expand options available to people.
If we're honest, it is probably a pretty fair critique to say that that there are not options for people outside of the nuclear family. Alice in Wonderland over on Rumble says, I think that a lot of people would consider a separated couple co-parenting to be a broken family. Alice in Wonderland, you're entering the land of Retardia, girl. You're entering the land of Retardia. We literally have already done a 3-hour stream today where we have explicitly explained in painstaking detail that the reason the left wants to abolish the nuclear family is not because they come from broken families, is not because they don't have kids, is not because they had a bad home life. That's all conservative bullshit propaganda. It is kindergarten level analysis, and the only people who believe that are people who have never actually listened to the left at all. The reason they want to abolish the family is the means of reproduction of capitalism. That's it. They believe that care needs to be available for all, regardless of what family you are born into. It has nothing to do with broken family, nothing. And quite frankly, if anyone else brings this up for the rest of this stream, they're going to get banned. It's going to be like insta-ban, because I can't keep repeating myself like this. This is conservative kindergarten bullshit analysis. We don't do that here. Hey, Fascist New World Order, guess what? You just got permanently banned on Rumble. Goodbye. You want to insult me? Go away.
So that they can more easily leave bad families, that they can form non-traditional families, or they can choose to live without a family, and having, ranging from affordable housing and free healthcare and education, and but also going beyond that to try to think about a restructuring of society that's not organized around the private household and private property.
Yeah, exactly. And
she just said it right there. This is about thinking about how to reorganize society so that it's not around the private household and private property. Private property is another term for capitalism. Listen again.
Think about a restructuring of society that's not organized around the private household and private property.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such an important thing to talk about all the different, things that happen in families. And like you talk about, family can be a site of violence. Most people that are sexually abused is somebody in their family. There's all this like horror of like meeting a stranger in a dark alley, but most people end up being raped by people they know or people in their families, and that needs to be, I think, talked about a lot more, because that's the reality. And I think you said the statistic was like 47,000 women had been murdered worldwide by their intimate partner in 2020. I had a friend that was killed by her partner, who she was in the process of breaking up with in 2020. Sorry. And it's just like, she's one of 47,000 that happened to that year, and the repercussions that has, not just on that person, but she had children or their friends, their family. It's like when you think of all of this abuses and all of these kinds of gun violence and things that happen, it's like the statistics that are reported are always astounding when you hear them, but then you think that's just the actual like deaths. What about people who were injured, or the people that were affected survived, or the people's families that are missing them? It's like so much more extensive than even the numbers can show.
Yeah, the second chapter and several other parts of the book focus on the family as a normative regime of white supremacy and heterosexuality, and particularly looking at two different forms of violence that constitute.
The families are a normative regime of what? Of white supremacy and heterosexuality. Again?
Yeah, the second chapter and several other parts of the book focus on the family as a normative regime of white supremacy and heterosexuality, and particularly looking at two different forms of violence that constitute families. One, a kind of external violence, often of the state, that defining certain families as legitimate and appropriate, and excluding other people from family forms altogether, and really attacking people's kin relations.
Exactly.
And then the internal violence that the family form enables, the privacy of the family, the personal domination between people, the intense interpersonal dependency, and how violence is really endemic to families, that, whether or not there are better families and worse families, but the family form itself enables child abuse and intimate partner violence.
Yeah, and I love how you really call out CPS as well. Can we talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm influenced by the work of Dorothy Roberts and the sort of movement to abolish the child policing system. And its relationship to family abolition, I think, is quite complex. And there's been a lot of people thinking these in parallel to each other besides me. And but I come out of, I've been a social work for a while, and I organized with the Radical Social Work Group, a formation that used to.
The Radical Social Work Group? Bot, can you look up Radical Social Work Group for me? I would appreciate it. Well, I mean, she is making a point, though. I mean, so one of the arguments they make to abolish the family is that people are sexually abused in their families. People are physically abused in their families. And if society builds, if the whole thing is that the care you receive is dependent on your biological family, but you're being abused by your biological family, where does that leave you? That's actually part of their argument for wanting to abolish it. And she's not wrong. That's correct. That is a problem that a lot of people have. Now, is that a reason to abolish the family? No. I mean, I'm not saying that her conclusion is valid. I'm just saying that the stated problem is valid, and that's actually, I mean, it's part of the problem. Thanks, Bot. Appreciate it.
To be in New York City. And one of our organizing projects was around collaborating with political groups of women who had been separated from their children in the child policing system, or the child welfare system, as it's sometimes called. And we advocated for social workers to exercise some thoughtfulness about what it can actually mean to call child protective services, how easily it can destroy people's lives, and how often child protective services is called in the context of poverty, when actually what a family needs is material support. And there are lots of other cases where parents need other kinds of support, but recognizing that the state plays an extremely destructive role in separating people. The huge racial disparities, the intense anti-Blackness really built into child protective services, the relative impunity of child abusers who are more privileged, whiter or wealthier, and recognizing that often child protective services is organized around a model of policing and family separation rather than actually figuring out what kind of support and care people need.
Yeah, it's absolutely the case. And it's so like, yeah, when you get
good
child
fine status
protective
persona
services involved, it's like, yeah, I mean, the parents are like on trial. And of course, there's kids that need protection from abusive parents. But like you said, a lot of times it's people that don't have resources, that are low SES, Black families that have been disenfranchised for generations. And yeah, instead of having like actual social supports in place, like give people resources, instead we send these little like task force out to like police them in their homes, you know? It's really disturbing.
Yeah, it's certainly that movement has been growing. I think there's been a lot more attention nationally around child protective services and its harmful role. And,
guys, I just want to call attention to the fact that we have about a little over 20 minutes of this stream left in terms of watching the presentation. We are also about we are about 22 minutes away from this stream ending. We are also about $22 away from the super chat goal. So if you've been waiting to send in your super chat because you want to, wait for the right moment, now might be the right moment. I'm just saying, I'd love to meet that goal. If you appreciate what I'm doing, $5, $10, like whatever, I do appreciate it. I only get paid when you guys value what I do. And if you don't value what I do, what are you doing here? You could be doing something else. It's Saturday night. You could have a life. I don't have a life. All I do is socialism. That's it. I do this for you. If you don't value what I do, go watch a movie. Go do something else. But I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
In working class communities of color. And there was a lot of attention under the Trump administration around child separation from migrant parents. And I think that movement is really essential, and mental health workers can play an important role.
Hey, Trendalin!
And since you brought
Trendalin
up
doesn't have a
Trump,
life either.
I love how you talked about how Trump.
You know what? I did you guys dirty yesterday. I was supposed to play the James Lindsay music video on my way out yesterday, and I forgot because I was in a bad mood. All right, well, I need $2 more to get to that super chat goal. If we get to the super chat goal, I will play. I felt bad about it. I remembered later, Reagan. I was like, oh shit, I fucked up. I was like, I fucked up bad. I'll play the penguin video on the way out if we meet the super chat goal. We only need $2 more. So that's the challenge. Yeah, well, you might be able to see the penguin video if we get $2 more of super chats.
Trump is like this perverse notion of like the white nuclear family, and they're like, they really are like, they're like everything that American politics is. Like, he's really the perfect American president, in my opinion, because it's like people.
And Dragon Balls in for the win. We made it. All right, hang on. I accidentally started the penguin video and you guys couldn't hear it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, we got another one. We got another one. We got another one. We got another one. I want to emphasize with their plight, but the answer to them is communism. Well, yeah, I mean, but this is kind of like the dangers of this, isn't it? Isn't it, Renan? It's like all of their ideas start out with like a nugget of goodness. There are good intents behind their ideas. They're saying like, listen, there are problems with this system. They're not wrong about that. But their solution to the problems is going to lead to all of us starving. And that's not cool. Hey, thank you guys for putting me way over the super chat goal. So that means we will be hearing the penguin song as we exit today. You know, Trendlin started it. If you don't like it, blame Trendlin. All right, let's keep going.
We're like so surprised that he happened, but it's like, how could this not have happened? It's like he's so like, this is what we are, whatever, this is what America is, you know, this is what we've done. But he's like, you point out, he's like, he doesn't pretend otherwise, whereas like the Bidens and all the rest of them pretend like, oh no, we're really good and we're about freedom and we want democracy and healthcare and whatever for everybody. We want everybody to have help.
Hey, Rogue Support, I see you guys over on Rumble. I'm not ignoring you guys. I just don't understand what you're doing. I don't understand it. And I'm willing to talk to you guys. It's a little weird. And I don't mean any offense by that. I don't understand what you're doing. So maybe if you guys can explain to me through DM what you guys are actually doing, like and like what it is, that would be helpful to me, because I'm just feeling a little confused about interacting with you guys, if I'm honest about it. I don't want to name over on Rumble as a question. To the knowledge in the chat, are there different kinds of socialists? Yes, there are. I hear some people with the same vocabulary, but they're clearly against abolishing the family. Okay, so first of all, Democrats are not socialists. Progressives are not socialists. Kamala Harris is not a socialist. Tim Walz is not a socialist. So those are not just different kinds of socialists, okay? They're just not socialists. They're not communists. Within the real far left, there are different groups, like, the Revolutionary Communists of America are they're one of the political parties that was protesting the DNC. You guys may have seen the Revolutionary Communists of America when Vivek Ramaswamy was talking with them at the DNC. They were also the group that did the march in Philadelphia. The Revolutionary Communists of America are real communists. They're real socialists. But they don't believe in queer Marxism. So they do not believe that queer Marxism is real Marxism. So there are nuances between the different groups for sure. Yeah. And you know, we look at all the different groups. We don't just look at one of the groups, we look at all the groups. But tonight we are looking at queer Marxists.
But he's really just like, you know, no, this is how it is. Like, why? Like, even with his quid pro quo thing with Zelensky in Ukraine, he's like, but that's how it works, you know? It's like, that is how it works, you know? It's like, he's the only one that's not pretending otherwise.
Yeah, I use his family as a sort of embodiment of a kind of the monstrous underside of bourgeois white family politics, right? The
bourgeois white
sexual
means capitalist.
Perversity of it, the nepotism, cronyism, the brutality that he revels in, and that people really identify with him as this, you know, primal, like fantasy primal father in a way. And the image, you referenced it briefly earlier, Melania and Donald Trump traveled to El Paso, Texas when they were president and first lady after a white supremacist massacred people And they went to the hospital where the survivors were, and none of the adult survivors would speak to them. But they
My dogs are having all sorts of feelings about my husband being home. I can hear them whining.
found a baby, Paul Chando,
It's happy
whose
wine,
parents
though.
had been killed in the massacre, and whose surviving relatives were sympathetic to Trump. And so there's this photograph that is reproduced in the book that the White House issued of them holding up the baby and Trump giving a thumbs up. Yeah, and that for me sort of embodies something about the politics of white supremacy and wealth around the family.
Absolutely, it's so grotesque. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up as well. Like, he's like, yeah, this perfect like primal father who gets all the women, including his daughter. You know, it's like the incest is there, the nepotism. His sons, like, what do they do? Somehow they have all of this money and everything. Yeah, they're really just like grotesque and perverse. And I hope that they're not back in the White House at the end of 2024. So anyway, we'll see. To be continued. I also appreciated getting to hear more about George Floyd's background. You talk about George Floyd and his background and like how he grew up a bit more in his family, and that was really nice that you fleshed out this person, you know, and so.
Well, it's interesting that you say you don't want to tell me what to do, because I think you're Fascist New World Order, who I just permanently banned over on Rumble, and you can complain all you want. You can complain all you fucking want. I'm going to ban you here too, because I don't want to hear from you. You're annoying. You don't learn anything. You're not here to learn. You don't make interesting contributions. All you do is whine and complain and get fucking passive aggressive. I don't know if you haven't gotten the memo, but I don't want to appeal to everyone, and I don't give a flying fuck if that costs me millions of dollars of super chats. Do you want to know why? Because it maintains my sanity. It maintains my sanity. I will give up literally millions of dollars to be able to not interact with absolute retards on the internet. That peace of mind is more valuable to me than money. You are not here to learn. You are here to cause problems. So much so that I already had you banned once on my YouTube channel. Then you picked a new name and went over to my Rumble channel, and I kept ignoring the bullshit you were putting in my chat over there. I ignored it. I let it go. But you know what? You fucking decided to insult me, which is clearly against one of the rules, and I'm no longer letting it go. So now you're permanently banned over here again as well. Thank you for coming into my chat and whining and trying to tell me my business. But the fact of the matter is I don't care about losing money. I care about teaching people who actually care to learn. To the woods, asshole. And the reason I only have 100 and whatever, like, I mean, people understand shadow banning is a thing on YouTube, right? I've been shadow banned literally for 4 years. 4 years. I can tell you the day it happened. It was August 26th of 2020. I can tell you exactly the day it happened. So the people who are here want to learn. The people who want to whine are banished to the fucking woods.
Instead of just him being this kind of name or figure or symbol.
Yeah, the third definition of family in the third chapter is as a place of care and refuge. And I take the example, the story of George Floyd calling out to his mother as he was being murdered. And his mother, Larcinia Floyd, had passed away, and I trace some of her history and her background. She was quite a remarkable woman, and the history of their family. And think about the family as where people turn to for care and support if they're lucky enough to have a decent family.
Like, really imagine,
and
and this is the last thing I'll say about this, I promise, but really imagine being so focused on things that don't matter that you have access to watching one of the preeminent Abolish the Family activists in the country. You have someone that's taking the time to break all this down to you and explain what all this means. And instead of taking advantage of it, and instead of asking good questions about it, and instead of trying to learn something from this experience, you come into my chat and complain about, why are you banning everyone? Why are you banning everyone? You could have so many more people watching if you are banning anyone. You have lost all this money in super chat. Like, that is a sign that someone's priorities are all fucked up and they just want it to be all about them. I just want to take a moment to appreciate the people who are actually here to learn and the people who are actually listening. And I want to apologize for you guys needing to put up with my rants every time something like this happens. But this is my life. Dealing with retards in my chat literally every day. And I appreciate the people who are not retarded. You make doing this worthwhile, you make doing this possible. And we have 20 minutes left of this stream and we're going to finish.
That definition of family, so in each case, the definition of family calls on a different notion, a different dimension of abolition. So the private household has to be overcome by the expansion of care throughout society. The family as a normative regime of violence has to be destroyed or dismantled, radically transformed. And the family as a source of refuge has to be generalized. It has to be available more widely. And trying to recognize in that example as well, the intense affective attachments that many people have to their families, and that I'm sympathetic to that. We live in a very, very difficult world, a world where surviving under conditions of racial capitalism is enormously challenging, and we all need all the help and support we can get. And if we can find that in our families, that's certainly not something my book is condemning. Like, what I'm condemning is its lack of availability everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. You're very clear about that. It's like family abolition doesn't mean abolish all nuclear families, but like if that works for you, okay, great for you. But like the vast majority of people, a lot of people it's not working for, or they don't have that, or they don't have parents, or they don't have, they don't have support. So let's make sure that there's support systems in place for everyone else.
Yeah, and if people want to form nuclear families, that isn't a property form. That doesn't determine your material chances. And that's a very challenging bit in moving past thinking about the private household. That who you're, and how I envision the overcoming of the family or the overcoming of class society in the latter part of the book, one of the basic premises is that who you happen to be related to and who you happen to love and who you happen to live with should not determine your material well-being. And that really requires a drastic rethinking of how we organize property and life choices.
See, that's what she just said. Who you happen to be born into and who you happen to live with should not be the sole thing that determines the resources you have access to. And that's why we need to abolish the nuclear family and reorganize our entire way of life and our property in a different way.
Yeah, that is very, very true. What made you decide to write this book? How did this come about?
It evolved slowly out of a number of different research tracks. One is I edited a reader called Revolutionary Feminism, and I looked at 100 years of radicals thinking about gender. So radical feminists, anarchists, communists, others, particularly in the context of broader rebellions that were happening, and trying to think about sexual and gender freedom. And I noticed a thread where in each era that I looked at, people talked about the family as something they were trying to overthrow or escape or move past, not so much in the sort of mid-'80s to mid-2000s or into the 2000s, but prior to then, family abolition had shown up repeatedly. But I was struck by something that initially was difficult to understand, which was how what people meant by family kept changing. And so the first step of this book was an essay and endnotes that became the core of the historical chapter, which tries to follow the arc of capitalist development, of racial capitalism, and the changing role of the working class family from the mid-19th century to the present, in order to understand the changing meaning of family amongst radicals. And so that became the core, the beginning of the book, the historical section. We've spent a lot of this interview talking about the present, right? The first third of the book that is focused on thinking about the contradictions of the family in the present. And I realized there were a number of things I liked about sort of focusing on family abolition as a place of theorizing. And one of them is I have a long-standing participation and involvement, commitment to thinking about queer liberation and trans liberation. And I'm a communist, I'm a Marxist. I care about sort of trying to understand how things fit in a much broader picture of capitalist development and human society. And there's, trans Marxism and queer Marxism are quite vibrant fields these days, and there's a lot of good work happening. But me trying to theorize the place of trans freedom in the dynamics of capitalism, the history of the family became a way of trying to embed thinking about gender and sexuality and materialist dynamics that evolved over time. And through that, it helps make sense of the other side of the family, which are those excluded from it, which include many trans and gender nonconforming people historically, not able to form normative families. So the history of the normative family,
trans and nonconforming people are not able to form families.
Of housewives amongst the strata of the white working class was very, very helpful in me trying to parse and make sense of the changing place of queer and trans people. And I would add Black and Indigenous people and colonized people and sex workers and others who've been excluded from the normative family. They're changing relationship to working class struggle.
Yeah, because as you point out in the book, anybody that doesn't fit this normative family dynamic with the gendered roles is then, automatically pathologized. And you do talk about sex workers and queer trans youth. And also, I kind of love how the book is it just me, or are these the trans flag colors?
Yes, the trans flag colors.
There's somewhere in the orbit of the trans flag colors, possibly the bisexual colors.
I love it. I noticed that.
She's so dumb. This podcast host is so dumb.
It's great. So what do you envision? I don't want to talk about everything in the book because they have to buy the book and support Pluto Press because this is an amazing press. I was also telling
Pluto Press is a socialist press.
They've been so great to communicate with, and they sing your praises and seem really great as a press as well. So I hope to promote more of their books and their work because it seems like a really good thing that they're doing.
Yeah. So
I wonder if we can trick Emmy O'Brien to like talking to me on my channel. I wonder if we can trick her. I wonder if we can create some sort of fake account. And like I can reach out to her via the fake account, and I can make myself look like extra socialist on the account, and then we stream it to like my YouTube channel and stuff. But maybe I say that I'm gonna do like an interview with her or something, and we're gonna record an interview. And maybe it's just like maybe I just have to privately record the interview, but maybe we stream it later or something, and I trick her into talking to me. Who thinks we should do this? Who thinks this is a good idea? Because again, Emmy O'Brien blocked me on Twitter, so I can't just. No, we're not going to tell Sophie about this. We have to keep this. We have to keep this quiet. But I'm just saying, I can create some sort of like fake sock account or something, and I can make myself look extra socialist and non-binary. And I think it's a good idea. I think we should try to trick Emmy O'Brien into talking to us. Would I be able to keep a straight face throughout it, though? I don't know. Anyway, let's continue.
The last third of the book is thinking about the future. I sort of open with talking about potential, what I call progressive anti-family reform.
Well, so the thing is, I feel like Emmy O'Brien keeps me out of sight, out of mind. So I feel like Emmy O'Brien probably knows who I am, but like she probably wouldn't recognize me if she was walking down the street or something. And I feel like if I got a good enough disguise, then I could get around that.
reforms, so social democratic measures to expand care outside of the family and the sorts of political coalitions that could enable. I talk about chosen family and their tremendous importance in queer communities, particularly queer communities of color. And I talk about the limits of chosen family and social democratic reforms in our present moment. And then from there, I try to speculatively theorize what the overcoming of the family could look like in a revolutionary process. And that, that's not meant as a
I'll make my hair look like a mohawk
but
again.
a means of trying to theorize our own desires, what freedom could look like, what a freer society could look like, and use that to try to understand the politics of the present and social movements today. And so I focus, the kernel of that is looking at forms of care that happens in mass protest, and then using that to try to imagine the formation of communes as a core unit of social reproduction in the course of a protracted overcoming of capitalism in this state.
Yeah, and then I also have to make sure we plug your fiction book, and I will also encourage everyone to listen to the previous interview that we had, and I'll link to it as well. But then you have this fiction book that you wrote earlier that kind of imagines what the future might look like with this commune.
Yeah, they're very much sister books. Everything for Everyone, an oral history of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072. I co-authored with a man, Abdul Hadi. People are returning to the book right now because in one of Aman's chapters, she envisions the liberation of Palestine. And I think it's a chapter that's giving people some solace right now and some hope. And they imagine similar futures, one from a fiction standpoint and one from a nonfiction standpoint. But I think for some people, seeing it depicted in fiction can be very much more accessible and resonant. But for others, they waited for the theory book. But I really like to think of them as in close relation to each other.
Yeah, they definitely are, because I've also read that book and they're really great. And like I said, this really is so informative, and I can't imagine that there's like a more kind of researched and like expansive volume on family abolition that exists. I haven't seen one or heard of one. It seems like an area that, like you said, other people are working on, but I haven't seen some book like this before.
Sophie Lewis's book is much shorter, but very good. And I think it's certainly Sophie's thinking has been very helpful for me. And I really see the books as complementary with slightly different focuses. But that can be an accessible engagement and covers much of the same history I do, but of course, more succinctly. Yeah.
But you're also such an amazing writer. Like, even though this is like researched and like academic, it's like so well written and easy to read, because sometimes academic tests, sometimes they can get a little cumbersome and tiring. But you write in a way that's really accessible. It's really easy to read. It flows as if you're reading like a novel or something. Like I think maybe because of all the vignettes you use and everything, I don't know, but the way you tied it all together, I was like, wow, you're an amazing writer.
Thank you. Notably, people often assume family abolition is my dissertation. I did a PhD work in sociology, and it's notably largely unrelated to my academic studies. I certainly studied some Marxism and some social movement history, so that gets worked into the book.
Hey, we got a newcomer. Just stumbled upon your videos a week or so ago. Watching some of your videos, I'm familiar with quite a bit of what you're saying. I gotta say, you're a saint for sitting through. Yeah, bro, I've driven myself to the edge of insanity sitting through this. But hey, I appreciate you coming. I hope that you will go back and watch this entire stream. This stream, if you're looking for family abolition content or queer Marxism content, the first presentation we watched in this stream was deeply informative. She said a lot of the quiet part out loud. We're kind of like rounding out the stream right now. We only have about 10 minutes left. But I definitely think this has been one of the better family abolition streams. So welcome. I'm really glad that you found my work. Yes, and everyone wave hi to James Lindsay and James Lindsay's supporters who are always watching me, because they always try to steal what I'm doing. Hi, James. Hi. Hi. We know you're watching, James. It's okay. It's okay. I'm better at this than you are. We know that. It's okay.
And, a close reader of Family Abolition can notice an influence of sociology and repeatedly throughout the book. But my dissertation research was on how capitalism shaped queer social movements since the 70s in New York City. So really very specific to an urban context, very...
We need to find Emmy O'Brien's dissertation, how capitalism shaped queer social movements in the 70s. Can someone go and find Emmy O'Brien's dissertation for me? Because Emmy O'Brien is deeply embedded in queer anarcho-communist subculture. And if she wrote a dissertation about queer subculture in the 70s, I want to read that shit. We have to find that. She did her PhD at NYU. Her real name is Michelle O'Brien, so the dissertation might be under Michelle O'Brien. We have to find that. We have to find her dissertation. That's got to be priority number one.
Restricted and much more analytically substantiated on some level, right? Primary research.
Oh God, Alice in you're going into retardia again, Alice. Alice in Wonderland over on Rumble says, I feel like the anti-family stuff is just pro-pedophilia. No. That's not what it is. That's a conservative talking point. That's not reality. Please stop listening to conservatives who lie to you. Please stop.
Secondary research. But I managed to maintain during my years of my PhD work and the years after a
Bach got it.
of engaging in communist theory and research that was parallel to and partially independent from my academic work. And becoming a psychotherapist since completing my PhD has been actually really helpful.
Yeah, we got it. Bot!
Trying to figure out how
long? Everyone give Bot around, like 07's in the chat for Bot. Bot found that dissertation in 3 fucking minutes. God damn, this is why Bot is the chief research officer. The chief, what do we call you, Bot? Are you the chief, Bot, what is your official title? I forget. Bot has some sort of chief official title in the cult because of her ability to research and find things really, really, really quickly. The chief investigative officer. That's what Bot's title is. Yeah, the chief investigative officer. Yes. Reagan is the chief organizational officer. Yasmin is the chief drama officer.
To live as a writer, I highly recommend being an analytic therapist.
Yeah,
totally.
Bot's a girl.
Yeah, I love that.
True.
That's a good point. Tell me a little bit more about your dissertation. It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, tell us about your dissertation, Emmy O'Brien.
Yeah, New York had effectively a citywide social democracy in the post-World War II period, had a much more comprehensive welfare state than any other region in the United States, had extremely cheap mass transit that the fares never went up.
Hang on. Bot, you found her dissertation abstract. We need to find the full dissertation. So the dissertation abstract will give us the title of the dissertation. And so now we just need to find the full dissertation.
Free higher education system. It had a free public health care system, a public hospital network.
Thanks,
it had
MK over on Rumble.
Powerful labor unions and very well organized socialist movements. It had rent control. Huge public housing infrastructure was built and union constructed housing, and that since the 1970s, a substantial part of that has been dismantled. That New York has really been taken over by financial interests and real estate interests, and that much of the city's welfare system has been gutted. And so I'm interested in how those are the same years that the gay liberation movement rose and fell and became the LGBTQ movement today. And so I was really interested in how that broader class politics of New York City shaped and constrained and enabled forms of LGBTQ organizing. So I interview wealthy donors to the gay marriage movement in New York City who work in the financial sector, I look at poor queers in the shelter system and the difficulty of sustaining that kind of organizing. I look at queer people organizing as retail union members, as union workers. And so I look at the sort of different class politics that helps explain why some demands widely shared by many working class queer and trans people really were not able to translate into major successful reforms, but other demands better backed by the rising lucrative industries of New York City were able to really get an institutional foothold in the city.
That's so interesting. I could go like a million directions with that. There's so many interesting things. Yeah, the bringing up like the Marriage Equality Act, I guess you were researching during that kind of period. That's another like question and debate of like, of course, everybody should have their rights, but like this idea of like gay marriage and why it's like so important, and also like why not just like break down this whole idea of marriage, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I was part of a network of people that were organizing that marriage should not be a sole focus of the LGBTQ rights movement.
Her hair is only long on one
And
side.
in the opening section on reforms in family abolition, I closely engaged the Beyond Marriage movement, and some of the statement that Queers for Economic Justice played some role in, and particularly this very influential essay by Kathy Cohen, recognizing a potential affinity between how the family politics of welfare recipients are pathologized, African American women, and queers, and the sort of need to think beyond identity categories to actually recognize that many people are marginalized through the centrality of marriage in contemporary law and benefits.
Absolutely. And also like with the going to the military, it's like, let's get rid of the military.
I think, well, not necessarily
If you want to
getting
go to the
rid of
military,
it,
absolutely you
but
should be able to, but I'd rather get rid of it. It's military
Definitely,
and
yeah.
industrial complex.
No, Alice in Wonderland. They're not have Alice in Wonderland. You've literally been listening all night. We're listening to one of the preeminent family abolitionists in the country. Have you heard her say anything at all about trafficking children? Please, no QAnon retards are allowed in my chat. Seriously, Alice in Wonderland say they're trying to traffic kids. I'm no dummy. They're coming to traffic kids. No, they're not. No, they're not. How dumb. God damn, I swear to God. We have like
And
5
the
minutes
fact that
left.
all the prisons are so
Lord help
are
me.
like for-profit prisons in the US and everything. It's all such a mess.
I work with a magazine called Pinko that
Pinko is a communist magazine.
A magazine of gay communism, and we've been active lately in researching and documenting and republishing material on queer Palestinians and thinking about their struggle.
Seriously?
And against what's called pinkwashing, the sort of enlisting of gay rights in the service of Zionism and imperialist violence. And I think we're at a moment where, accusations about Hamas being unusually homophobic end up servicing
Hamas
this
is
brutal
unusually
genocide
homophobic.
that's happening in Gaza. So that's the really important counterpart to thinking beyond the mainstream gay rights movement, is recognizing the enormous horror being inflicted on queer people in Gaza, and that's deeply tied up with the racism of Zionism and imperialism as it is with homophobia, and really recognizing these connections and trying to think through them and trying to be in solidarity across these intersecting issues.
We should all be in solidarity.
Yeah, that's so important because it's so insidious. It's just like having all of these corporations at Pride and all these corporations like flying the Pride flag like just for June, It's just like
Yeah, they call that pink washing.
Yeah.
They're using it. They don't really care. They
When
care if you're a
capitalism
consumer,
uses
and
the
they would love to have
gays.
your money also.
I think in the last couple of years, with the rise of the kind of anti-queer fascism in the United States, particularly targeting trans people and trans children, the unreliability of corporate pride is really quite clear. Watching Starbucks and Target pull their queer stuff in order to avoid harassment by fascists.
That means capitalists. Oh, is that it? No.
As it is with homophobia, and really recognizing these connections and trying to think through them and trying to be in solidarity across these intersecting issues.
Emmy O'Brien
so
probably thinks I'm a
because
fascist.
it's so insidious. It's just like having all of these corporations at Pride and all these corporations like flying the Pride flag like just for June.
I'm an
It's just
anti-queer
like
fascist.
Yeah,
I'm an anti-queer fascist for sure.
They're using it. They don't really care. They care if you're a consumer, and they would love to have your money also.
I think in the last couple of years, with the rise of the kind of anti-queer fascism in the United States,
I'm an anti-queer fascist,
particularly targeting trans people and trans children, the unreliability of corporate pride is really quite clear. Watching Starbucks and Target pull their queer stuff in order to avoid harassment by fascists, and that corporations act as very poor allies.
Well, I also have to say that we're working on this book on queering psychoanalysis, and I can't wait to see your contribution because you're going to be in it.
They're writing a book together about queering psychoanalysis.
Well, anxious about my contribution.
Nat, you can either DM it to me on Twitter or you can send it to activelyunwoke@gmail.com.
I'm doing my best to pull it together. I'm hoping to publish in your collected volume about thinking about the role of
don't pay for shit. We can find it for free.
Fantasy,
don't worry
the fantasy that you have some other parents or people that you belong with elsewhere in children managing their relationship to lineage and the symbolic and family structure. So thinking about the centrality for many, many trans children in a certain kind of family romance.
Amazing. And whatever you write is going to be accepted with joy. And also, if you need a little extra time, that's totally fine. Because we have time.
Well, let's check in soon about it.
And one of the most important ethics behind this book is that the editors and I have agreed on is that we are not censoring anybody's ideas, because basically everybody contributing to the book is queer and or trans. And so the ideas that we don't want to censor are the ideas of anybody. I want everybody contributing to speak whatever they want to speak, and it will not be changed.
I really appreciate your support of my work in particular, and I think the enormous role you play in psychoanalysis around the world as an advocate, as somebody with clear political values, as somebody who spent a lot of time helping to convene rich groups, and this podcast, I think Rendering Unconscious is an enormous contribution to a kind of progressive and critical and open-ended engagement with psychoanalysis and its relationship to human growth and transformation.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being here with me on this journey, and thank you for all the work you're doing. It's super amazing, and I can't wait to have you back.
All right, that's it. Hey, Alice in Wonderland, who said she's been following me for years. Girl, if that was true, then you would know that I've covered more about Abolish the Family content than really anyone on the internet, and you would have watched all that Abolish the Family content, and you would have never, ever, 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 ever heard about them trafficking kids. That subject would never have been mentioned. So don't bullshit a bullshitter. I can see right through it. I never see you in my chat. Come on. But in good news, guys, we have reached the end of our stream, but that doesn't mean the fun is over yet. Next, we are going to be doing, coming up soon, if you are on the Twitters, I'm going to be hosting my first ever Socialism Saturday after party, where we are going to be talking about what we learned tonight. We're going to be discussing these ideas. And really, guys, I want to hear from you. I've been talking for 4 hours now. I want to hear from you. I want people to come and join this space and to do a little bit of a debrief on what you learned, what were you surprised about, what did you already know, kind of what were your key takeaways, what do we think people need to know about this. I really want to encourage everyone to grab a mic. I want to hear from all of you, even if you don't normally talk on the internet. It's okay. And so come and join us for this space. I'm going to be starting it in a couple of minutes. As always, if you appreciate the work I'm doing, please make sure you head over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Sign up as a supporter for $8 a month, $80 a year. I am trying to get 100 new paying supporters on my Substack this month, and you can help me meet that goal by heading over there and signing up, and I really do appreciate it. And while you're there, please make sure you sign up for the Unwoke Zine workshop that we're going to be doing on Wednesday. This is a free training to teach you how to make zines, which are basically propaganda pieces that we're going to use to fight back against the left. A lot of you have asked me, what can we do to fight back? What can we do to fight back? What can we do to fight back? We're going to teach you how to make propaganda that looks cool, that looks engaging. And then we're going to go out into the world and we're going to litter a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to litter propaganda into the world. I literally just put the Twitter link in the chat, but I'll put it in the chat again for people who weren't paying attention the first time. There is the Twitter link. And now we are going to exit with the goddamn Penguin song. We are gonna exit with the Penguin song. For those of you who have not heard the Penguin song, this is from an organization called amaze.org. This is taught in elementary schools and middle schools all over the country. This is how kids are learning about gender ideology all over the place. So I'm going to go start the Twitter space in a couple minutes. If you don't want to hear the Penguin song, you don't have to. You have been duly warned. And if you want to be shocked and amazed at how kids are learning to be non-binary, we will show you. Please mount the like button on the way out the door, guys. Please make sure you are subscribed on the channel. If you are not subscribed already, I do Socialism Saturday every Saturday at 6 p.m. And I will see some of you over in the Twitter space after party very, very soon. Take care, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you soon.
No matter how you're born, we each have the style. I'll tell you in a while exactly what I like.
Ariana and Renee, they both are born girls. They go into their changing rooms. Ariana loves twirls. That's not for Renee. Pink will not do. All girls don't wear dresses, they wear pants too. Has Renee lost her mind? What's running through her head? Ariana can fix this, no is what she said.
When you put it on, you do a little groove. You know you've gotta move. That's how you know you've got it right.
This is me, who I am. See me in full color, it's me like no other. Originality.
No matter how you're born, we each have the style. I'll tell you in a while exactly what I like.
Bryce and Jason, they both are born boys. They go into their changing rooms. Bryce jumps out with joy. Jason has a different idea. The sweater is where it's at. Bryce has to fix this. Here, try this or that. Wait just 1 second. Don't tell him how to dress. Ariana knows this. Only Jason can express.
This is me, who I am. See me in full color, it's me like no other. Originality.
No matter how you're born, we each have the style. I'll tell you in a while exactly what I like.
Darla and Charles, one girl and one boy. They go into their changing rooms. Charles is feeling coy. Others are thrilled with the look, but Charles is quite unhappy. Let's try this again. Yeah, this is snappy. Some are confused. They just don't understand. Charles, now Charlotte is certain. Ariana's her biggest fan. Some might keep their distance, but others will come around. Come on over, Darla. Show us what you found. Darla had something on, but is not quite convinced. She wants to try again, yet she still gives a wince. Nope, not right either. Why can't she decide? Sometimes it takes time, only she can find her stride. Darla presents an outfit. The new name is Darren. Now everything feels right. The person within he's sharing.
When you put it on, you do a little groove. You know you've gotta move. That's how you know you've got it right.
This is me, who I am. See me in full color, it's me like no other. Originality.
Here we have Skylar, born a boy or girl. Not interested in the girl look. Won't give the boy look a whirl. Skylar wants a new path, and it isn't one of those. This is a unique look from Skylar's head to toe.